The story begins in a sort of post-apocalyptic world. At this moment, the hero connects with the community of the dead. While facing a monster, someone shouts his name, Suyu Star, saying they believe in him. The boy is euphoric, being a kind of sorcerer of the team. At this moment, he prepares to launch his final blow against a horde of monsters. Shortly after, hundreds of these monsters were defeated by the boy. He is lying down, deeply wounded, saying that there are still many left to finish off. Someone comments that he would have finished them all if he had some short-range weapon when he used his skill. At this moment, he wonders if this will be his end when suddenly a kind of artifact appears. It is a destiny Yahello that he can roll using his possession percentage. After that, the boy suddenly appears talking to a girl. He gets irritated and insults her. Sighing nervously, he stands up and says he should go home if she's just going to talk nonsense. She calls out to Kyon Suyuki, saying he shouldn't be like that and that he should listen to her. Seeing the girl's reaction, the boy is shocked. Shivering from nervousness, he asks what the subject is. She replies that he might not believe it, but the Tower of Trials will soon appear on Earth. Upon hearing this, the hero gets irritated because he had just been fired. However, the girl just hits him, saying he should pay attention to what she has to say. Then she reminds him that he must never open the status window and that when he reaches Section 6, he must form a contract with the worst god. Nervously, the boy wonders if the soul is joking. Being very emphatic, the girl explains that he must remember these 3 things. Then she repeats them exhaustively and asks if he understood, and he says yes. She explains that the tutorial goes up to the 5th floor and that gods will try to disturb him to make a contract, but he must never do it. She concludes that when he completes the tutorial, he will have an hour of rest before the 6th floor, so he must make a contract with the worst god possible. Irritated, she states that when he awakens the skill, he must have his weapons in hand, being a sword or axe and no wand. However, the boy doesn't like hearing this because he says magic is for men. He says that if he uses the fireball, it will be very good, but she insults him, saying he has no talent for magic. Also irritated, the boy says he won't play if he can't be a sorcerer, but ends up getting beaten and then decides to agree with the girl. Red from the drink, she says she must continue now, but a window opens, interrupting her explanation. The system informs that from now on, the area has been selected and that 1 million people from this area can enter the Tower of Trials. Not understanding anything, the hero wonders what this is all about, but soon realizes that at this moment he can no longer speak. The girl then uses miming to tell him that he must remember those 3 things. At this moment, he ends up getting quite nervous. Observing Rijong, he wonders if she might be a regressor. However, his thoughts are interrupted by the system. He ends up being transported by the system. It is then informed that the basic system of the tower will be adjusted and may force participants to make unfair contracts. And immediately the girl is transported to an empty room to choose her weapons. Looking around, the boy realizes that this is the Tower of Trials that Rijong was talking about. The system says that his class will be defined based on the equipment he chooses. Upon reading this, he becomes extremely nervous and starts sweating even more. Analyzing the options, he understands that if he's going to follow what the girl said, he has to pick a sword or a spear. However, he becomes very fascinated by one of the magical weapons. As he approaches the wand, he remembers his friend saying that he used it like a pipe to hit enemies because he didn't know how to use magic. Understanding that he has no aptitude for it, he ends up letting go of the idea. After that, he turns to the rusty longsword, an inappropriate longsword that looks so old it's about to break at any moment. Despite all the information, he decides on the rusty sword. Then the system says he must open the status window and that he only has to say status window out loud. It explains that this is a very useful element when facing the trials, allowing him to improve his abilities through it. Upon reading this, the boy gulps hard, remembering one more of the girl's instructions. The system says he will gain 5 attribute points if he opens the window now, and they will help him improve his abilities. And that without it, everyone will have limitations in acquiring skills. Thus, the system pressures the boy, giving him only 5 minutes to decide. Nervous, the boy thinks this seems more like a slave contract. Time passes until there are only 49 seconds left to decide. Sweating like a pig, the boy states that he will not open his mouth. At that moment, only 10 seconds remain, making the situation increasingly tense. Seeing so little time to decide, he starts wondering what he should do. His head is flooded with various options and possibilities, until the system informs that time is up and that he did not open the window, meaning he will be transported to the trials on the 1st floor. Nervous, he looks around and realizes that apparently he is still alive. At that moment, he begins to be teleported by the system. It informs that participant Quan refused to open the status window, gaining the attribute of Challenger, and will not have growth limitations. Additionally, it also informs that the difficulty level of the tower for the boy will be adjusted to the Challenger phase. After the system's full explanation, the hero is transported to an underground place. The game informs that he must kill all enemies in just 18 hours. Looking around, he notices that it's very dark. However, he tells himself to stay calm because the tutorial is going to be quite easy. Without thinking twice, he wields his sword looking for enemies. Looking around, he sees there's nothing and that he shouldn't worry. But at that moment, something tries to hit him and he manages to block it. Taking another misstep, another trap is activated. He barely survives by throwing himself to the side. Falling to the ground, he sighs, saying he almost kicked the bucket. But he quickly realizes it was a trap and that he has to walk more carefully. However, as he gets up, he ends up being hit by a trap. This time it actually managed to injure him. Looking up, he realizes it's some kind of goblin. The creature tries to hit the hero, who manages to dodge. With a demonic air, the creature says he's a lucky human for escaping that secret attack. This is the assassin goblin, whose strength is attacking in the dark with a secret move. Wielding his sword, the protagonist thinks he must first create distance and analyze the enemy. Even so, the goblin calls the human stupid. Seeing this, the boy thinks that maybe something is wrong and wonders if the arrow from before wasn't actually a trap. Rushing in, he says he needs to deal with that creature before it fires the crossbow. With a manic look, the monster prepares for another arrow attack. The beast then fires an arrow toward the hero, who manages to dodge. Going all in, he tells himself he is bigger than that goblin and thus should win. Nervously, he thinks he must kill it before it reloads. But as he gets closer, he comes across a small creature that can actually use melee weapons. He barely manages to twist his body to avoid being hit, getting only a light cut. Then after spinning, he prepares to deliver the final blow with his old sword. And with just one slash, he manages to finish off the monster with no difficulty. But as we can see, the protagonist's physical aptitude is quite low, as he's already tired. Furthermore, after making his first kill, he begins to feel the weight of what it means to kill. But he quickly changes his mind, telling himself he shouldn't worry about such small things. Then after that, he was toward the creature to grab his weapon, just in case. Touching it, he starts to feel a strange buzzing, and at that very moment he ends up falling to the ground. Tired, he begins asking why he is dizzy. Then the system reveals that the goblin's dagger was coated in handmade poison. Of course, that's something the boy would never think of, since he's just a novice. Several notifications show that his agility, strength, and endurance levels have increased. The protagonist is lying on the ground, feeling intense pain in his body. Tired, he begins to wake up slowly, trying to understand what happened. As he moves, the pain increases, making him realize what had occurred. Stu-hyuk notices that he had passed out. Beside him, the goblin is dead with no sign of life. He remembers the time limit he had to complete the mission. He does the math and figures he must have been unconscious for about 5 hours. He adjusts his weapons and tools on his belt. He picks up the arrows that have fallen. Wielding his sword, he declares that he will survive. Without thinking much, he begins his long walk, until he steps on something suspicious, noticing a change in the level of the ground, and a red light tries to strike him. But he is quick and manages to dodge it with extreme ease. With his sword, he decides to touch the piece that is moving. Not knowing the consequences, he cautiously presses on it, and keeps pushing that part of the floor further and further, causing several beams of light to be launched at him, which makes him realize his physical ability has improved. His eyes stay sharp upon noticing the arrival of monsters. He hides behind a pillar and observes them from afar. The monsters have not yet noticed his presence. His plan was to kill one first and deal with the other one-on-one. It was necessary to aim without trembling for the shot to be accurate. Looking for the right moment, he tried to shoot, but he dodged something that could have been fatal. With a narrowed gaze, he realized what had happened. The two goblins were running toward him with their weapons. In fact, it was a trap. The place was too dark for him to see the fight. He tried to move to a brighter area, and the monsters grew increasingly irritated. Calm was his #1 priority. An arrow came toward him, but he destroyed it with his sword. Even so, he shouldn't grow confident and should keep an eye on the next move. As he thought that, the monsters were already flying in his direction. The goblin couple was always together. As he learned more about his enemies, he paused to reflect. That until yesterday, he too had been one half of the couple. And if he weren't trapped in that place, he could have returned with her. This thought fills him with rage and he slices the goblin in two. The creature becomes even more enraged upon seeing her companion fallen on the ground. The goblin girl is completely desperate, while Soo-hyuk shows no remorse at all. With extreme anger and a vengeful instinct, she attacks him, while the young man delivers another strike, saying that being single is better. He cuts off the goblin girl's head and she cries, saying she failed to get her revenge. Her body falls to the ground and her weapon lands far from her. There is still someone in the shadows firing arrows. He thinks it might be part of a couple, but the other claims to be alone. Maybe that coward wasn't entirely trustworthy, but the character begs him to trust his word. Smiling, he asks him to step out of the light and end his suffering. Emerging from the darkness, the goblin begins to appear. Crying, he begs for his life. It was a child goblin, small and weak, too young for combat, and who hid in the dark when threatened. Curious, the protagonist asks what brought him to that place. Angrily, the small creature calls Soo-hyuk an idiot and says he was doing his duty as a goblin. After the insult, he grips his sword and threatens to kill him, while the goblin cries and begs once more for his life. The curiosity to know what kind of monster he was dealing with was stronger, and the goblin was already prepared to answer his questions. The young man wanted to know what the monster's intentions were. Cowering, he replies that goblins are tasked with stopping humans. Now the final decision was whether to end the green creature's life, which left him in complete despair, trembling for his safety. Soo-hyuk approaches with his enormous and powerful weapon. Desperate, the child starts crying even more. The protagonist rethinks what he had just said. The goblin retracts his words and claims it's not necessary to kill humans. Now he knew the little one was referring to himself. He asked to be believed because goblins don't lie. The best thing he should have done was kill the creature in the dark. His time limit was at 10 hours and 10 minutes to kill the enemies, but maybe the one in front of him was harmless. Tears fell from the goblin's face as he said goblins didn't need to fight. He decided to lower his weapon, believing in his words, thinking he could perhaps kill him later. Decidedly, he stated that he would not take the little creature's life. Upon hearing this, the tears turned into an intense glow in his eyes. A message appears highlighting the salvation of a goblin child. At the same time, in Hee-jung's tutorial, the woman's gaze is focused on something in her field of vision, and the monsters are holding knives. Hidden behind a rock, she tries to protect herself, while asking Suryup to be careful. Upon noticing an opening, she begins casting a spell, turning and unleashing all her power on the enemies. Immediately, they are hit with full force. Meanwhile, the protagonist was still talking with the little one. Suryuk wanted to tie his hands. The child goblin agreed right away, highlighting the human's caution, but also his generosity. Upon hearing another insult, he couldn't believe the audacity of that monster. He lightly tapped him on the head without much force, and began looking for a rope. He felt relieved when he spotted one not far away and ideal length. He tied the goblin's hands, who didn't seem very happy with the situation, until the young man noticed something strange. But the creature didn't know what it was. Something was shining intensely on his neck. Upon noticing the interest, his body tensed up, but the warrior grabbed him by the neck. Since he didn't want to hear a no from a brat, he grabbed the child's necklace. It was a ruby necklace belonging to the young goblin that seemed to hold a hidden secret. That object appeared to be of very precious value, and it sparked the protagonist's interest, who saw it as a fair trade for the goblin's life. But the child said he couldn't take it. Even speaking the truth, the warrior was only interested in his reward. He wanted that ruby at any cost. However, it was not possible to pull the necklace off the goblin's neck. That was the warning given by the creature. Even if he killed the monster, he would not be able to get the precious gem. But he claimed it was just a joke. Now that it was getting late, the two decided to move on. Suryuk walked ahead with his weapon drawn. He grew curious to know the name of his new travel companion, but his name was simply Goblin. However, the young man didn't believe his answer, which left the child quite confused. He lowered his head and began to cry. Apparently, he had no name, which reminded him of a certain character from the movies. So he enthusiastically named him Dabi, but he didn't like that name. The warrior realized it was impossible to reason with a child. There was a trap just ahead. The goblin warned that it was very easy to notice. Since he could see in the dark, the protagonist realized the goblin had been pretending not to see in the dark the whole time. With a gentle look, the child seemed to expect some praise. Taking a deep breath, the young man focused on not seeming irritated. Ruffling his hair, he praised him and told him to warn if there were any enemies or traps ahead. They continued their journey while the goblin announced every trap he saw. That monster was very useful for his mission, until he started to think about something. He began to dodge the traps triggered along his path. He realized that the more he dodged, the better his reaction time became. The young goblin was impressed by such agility. Laughing, he claimed to be the hope of humanity. The protagonist was already showing signs of exhaustion from walking so much. That path was very long, and he wanted to know if there were more enemies nearby. Finally, they had reached their destination. The protagonist's expression changed instantly when he realized they had finished their journey. Flames were lit on totems. There was a bridge that led to a large door. The two began to observe the place. It was the infamous boss room. It had been 11 hours since Suryuk had entered the first floor, and after all that time, he had arrived at the boss room. Now about 7 hours remained to defeat all the enemies. The protagonist was eager to enter the boss room, while also apprehensive, not knowing what was inside that place. Not even the young goblin had any idea. It all seemed extremely suspicious. Raising his left hand, he offered to enter the room. The two characters approached as he touched the door with one of his hands. An energy enveloped them, and they disappeared. The place was filled with lava. He had less than 7 hours to kill all the enemies, and the fight would begin in 10 seconds. He began to devise a plan to emerge victorious from there. He saw a huge goblin in steel armor, 7 warrior goblins with swords, and 2 goblin assassins with crossbows. He thought that number was too high, having only fought 4 at once before. The paladin goblin was the one that worried him most, due to its ability to cast strong holy spells. But the time to begin the fight was running out now at 5 seconds. Even so, he was determined to kill all the monsters. Meanwhile, the child goblin was crying, saying that place was too hot. The time to begin the fight had already expired, but the protagonist was not worried about Dabi. He should worry about himself, since he would die if he didn't kill all the others. With the crossbow in his hands, he starts running. He comes across 2 goblins who attack him. In that situation, Suryuk had to be very careful. He first attacked the one coming from the right. 3 more warriors arrived with their swords. Due to the short distance, he would be unable to use the crossbow. Gaining momentum, he threw the weapon at one of them. Hit in the stomach, the goblin was hurled backward. He couldn't lose momentum since everything around him threatened his existence. 5 more warriors approached from behind. Fortunately, the paladin hadn't started any movement. Noticing everything around him, he began to run with his sword. but a goblin tried to shoot him with a crossbow. His agility was impressive, positioning himself behind the enemy and kicking him in the head. Smiling, he was happy to land the blow, while the goblin hadn't even noticed his movement and was thrown into the lava with no chance to defend himself. The protagonist had anger in his eyes. He charged at the other monsters, using blocking and attack strikes, and hit all the enemies with intense fury. Without resting, he was taking them down one by one. Horrified, Dabi watched the entire fight. To him, the human looked like a monster in that moment. Even tired, he had to continue. His life was at stake. Meanwhile, the paladin watched him like a king. Standing in the same place, he had no intention of moving. A goblin came with a sneak attack from behind, but Suyuk was extremely sharp and skilled. Sensing the incoming strike, he counterattacked and faced two more creatures in front of him. Growing increasingly angry, he gripped his sword with determination. There were many enemies against just one. While striking, he demanded they learn their place. After the fight, he could lower his sword for a second. Extremely exhausted, he couldn't stand upright, but his gaze still revealed uncontrollable fury. The paladin had moved from his spot, but he began to make small movements. Soon he stood with his sword and shield. Snorting, he gave the impression that he was heading into battle. The protagonist asks if he wasn't being too harsh with him, since he had just killed 10 goblins with only an old sword while the others sat the whole time. The paladin realized that for a human, he wasn't doing badly. However, he now stated that his only fate would be death. The protagonist laughed at that statement. He attacked while swinging his blade toward the warrior, who dodged with immense precision without a single scratch. Even tired, he knew that attacks like those could help in the fight. Faster than light, he positioned himself behind the paladin and went in with all his strength for the attack. But the massive goblin was quick to notice his intention and protected himself with his wooden shield. Sukiruk's sword shattered as if it were made of plastic. The child goblin was desperate upon seeing what happened to the weapon. But that was a great advantage for the goblin paladin. Looking at the damage done, he realized he was completely screwed. He felt the impact and staggered back, trying to regain his balance. Pain coursed through his body and his heart raced with the tension of battle. A fierce roar echoed through the air, followed by the sound of something spinning rapidly. His body protested, but he couldn't afford to stop. He clenched his teeth, feeling the urgency of the situation. Sweat streamed down his forehead, mixing with dirt and blood. His mind worked frantically in search of a solution. Then something came to him. Frantically groping, he found the dagger he had taken earlier. Now that he could observe it better, he realized it was smaller than he imagined. Even so, it could be useful. Gripping it firmly, he adjusted his stance and took a deep breath, preparing to continue the fight. On the other side, his opponent grew furious upon seeing him rise again. The creature's gaze filled with rage and its body tensed, ready to attack again. He knew he couldn't hesitate. It was time to advance. The protagonist moved forward quickly, looking for any opening in his opponent's attack. His eyes analyzed every movement of the creature, waiting for the right moment to act. Finding a gap, he prepared to strike, mentally counting the seconds he had left. His heart pounded in his chest as he moved with precision, determined to hit his enemy before it was too late. The creature, however, did not retreat. With a piercing roar, it launched itself at him, crying out for his death and invoking an unknown name. Its attacks were fierce and relentless, as if it were determined not to let him move forward. The fight intensified, his lungs burned from the effort and sweat poured down his skin. Each blow demanded more from his body and fatigue began to set in. Still, he couldn't give in. With one final movement, he gathered all his strength and delivered the finishing blow. The impact echoed through the area, marking the end of the confrontation. He panted heavily, feeling the exhaustion take over his body. The battle had been intense, and he had barely escaped with his life. As he caught his breath, a faint murmur caught his attention. The fallen creature whispered something, its words broken and filled with pain. It seemed to be pleading for healing, as if there was still hope for its survival. He then remembered the name he had heard earlier. That creature was a goblin paladin. He remained standing, panting, while the creature before him expressed surprise. His opponent seemed unable to believe that a human still stood after such an intense fight. Disgust washed over him for a moment, but it was soon replaced by the need to act. The creature kept talking, mocking the fact that any other would have already been killed by the goblins. He clenched his teeth, feeling the irritation grow. His body protested. He needed to end it once and for all. But no matter how hard he tried, his muscles didn't respond. A tremor ran through his arms and legs as exhaustion seemed to take full control. Then something unexpected happened. His enemy, who was still talking, suddenly collapsed to the ground. His eyes turned to the dagger the goblin had been holding before. A simple yet well-maintained weapon coated with handmade poison. That's when he realized the creature's laughter echoed through the area. The goblin was amused to see him understand the situation, the poison. He hadn't noticed it before, but the blade had been laced with the substance. His opponent saw his expression and mocked him once again. But then something even more surprising occurred. The creature began to murmur unknown words. His eyes narrowed. This meant goblins also had healing abilities. He clenched his fists. That battle was not over yet. He charged forward without hesitation, determined to end the fight. His body was still in pain, but his resolve did not waver. The enemy shouted in defiance, but the confrontation quickly came to an end. A bright light filled the space. He took a deep breath, believing it was finally over. However, a notification appeared before his eyes. Kill all enemies. Time remaining, 6 hours and 1 minute. He furrowed his brows. Before he could process the situation, an injured goblin crawled toward him. Murmuring strange words, the creature began to cast a healing spell. He narrowed his eyes, asking if that goblin knew magic. The answer came quickly. The little being revealed that he could have used the ability earlier, but didn't simply because no one had asked. He sighed, feeling a mix of exhaustion and frustration. It was his fault for not asking, but now they had a bigger problem. He looked at the goblin, who now watched him with a hesitant expression. If he was the last enemy, time was still ticking. If the mission said to eliminate all, then something was still wrong. But the small goblin didn't seem like a threat. His gaze wandered across the area. There was something he wasn't seeing. His attention returned to a detail he had previously ignored. The necklace around the goblin's neck. He had already tried to remove it before without success. And stranger still, how could such a small goblin belong to that tower? He looked closely at the necklace, suspicious that something might be hidden there. The small goblin, still clutching the object tightly, seemed nervous and hesitant. He moved quickly, extending his hand, determined to take the necklace. The goblin tried to back away, but his resistance was in vain. With a determined expression, he pressured the goblin to hand over the object. The small creature trembled, reluctant, but knew he had no choice. The man smiled, observing the creature's obedience, and firmly took the necklace. He felt a strange sensation as he touched it, as if something was about to happen. Suddenly, the goblin froze, his eyes wide and fixed on something above them, as if an invisible force was pulling him. He remained still, staring intently at what seemed to be a source of mysterious attraction. The man looked at the goblin with concern, wondering what exactly was happening, but the goblin seemed completely absorbed in the phenomenon. The tension in the air intensified, and the man realized that something greater was at play. The answer might lie in the necklace or in the goblin's strange reaction, but he didn't know what to expect next. He kept his eyes fixed on the goblin, trying to understand if he was still the same creature he had known. Something felt different, and his expression grew serious as he waited for an answer. Suddenly, a message appeared before him stating that a goblin named Penreek expressed his gratitude. Confusion filled his mind. The name was unfamiliar, and for a moment he wondered what it all meant. He tried to listen for any sound around him but realized he couldn't hear anything. An absolute silence took over the environment as if he were isolated from the rest of the world. Before he could react, another message appeared in front of him. The completion of the first floor of the tutorial was confirmed, and he should proceed to the waiting room after the score was calculated. Relief washed over him as he suspected the necklace was the key to resolving the situation. However, a new concern arose. If he were taken to the waiting room now, he wouldn't have time to grab a shield. He couldn't proceed to the next floor without any protection. An additional notification appeared, informing him that the hidden mission had been completed. His score began to be calculated, but his frustration grew as he recalled how hard it was to win without proper items. Before he could complain, a new object appeared in front of him. A shield belonging to the Goblin Paladin. It was sturdy and had a healing spell, though with a considerable cooldown. Observing the item, he realized he had been fairly rewarded. The shield had a valuable ability, something that would certainly help in future challenges. At last, one final message appeared, informing him that as a reward for the secret mission, a goblin named Dobby would accompany him on his journey. He looked at the small creature, realizing that his path from now on would not be a lonely one. Suyuk held the shield firmly, admiring his new acquisition. After all the fighting, he finally had a proper defensive item. As he examined his new possession, he noticed Dobby was messing with the Goblin Paladin's corpse. The scene was strange and unexpected, but before he could react, a doubt arose in his mind. Even having completed the secret mission, he realized that his only reward seemed to be the little goblin. That didn't seem fair. If it was a hidden mission, there should be something more significant as a prize. Indignation filled his thoughts, but before he could complain, a new message appeared in front of him. His body began to glow, and in an instant, he was teleported. Upon opening his eyes, he realized he was in the waiting room. The system then revealed his new achievements. His attributes had increased, he had obtained new abilities, and his physical endurance had improved. Additionally, an unexpected event was triggered related to higher powers that he still did not fully understand. Even so, he felt the reward was still not enough for all the effort he had expended. But for now, he was alive, and that was what truly mattered. He looked around. The waiting room offered the bare essentials to recover his strength. There was basic food and a place to rest, allowing him to prepare for the next challenges. As much as he complained about the system, he acknowledged he was in good condition to continue. His journey would still be long, but for now, he could breathe easy before facing the next floor. After completing the first floor, a new notification appeared before him, informing him that he could now form a contract with first-class constellations. This type of alliance would allow participants to receive support, facilitating their progress within the tower. He carefully read the information, aware that these constellations could be a valuable help in the future. However, what interested him most was what would come next. Several first-class constellations began to offer sponsorship contracts. Powerful names appeared before him, each representing a celestial entity with unique abilities. Despite the tempting offers, he pondered the situation. From what he knew, forming a contract with a first-class constellation carried the possibility of fifth-class gods appearing. To him, those gods were nothing more than insignificant frauds. He decided it would be better to wait until the 5th floor, where the truly powerful gods would manifest. The system then confirmed that he had advanced to the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials and informed him of the remaining tutorial time. The environment around him fell silent, giving him the chance to rest before the next challenge. While reflecting on how much time had passed since he entered the tower, he was interrupted by the goblin who accompanied him. Dobby was there in the waiting room with him, asking for food and water as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He looked at the little goblin, realizing that somehow his journey had become more unusual than he expected. He smiled, satisfied with a moment of rest. After an exhausting journey, he decided to share a meal with Dobby, the goblin who had surprisingly shown himself to be more than just a simple companion. As they shared bread and water, he wondered what was really going on with his small ally. Dobby seemed more and more peculiar, with behavior that sometimes bordered on the bizarre. He wondered if the goblin wasn't more like a piglin, with his strange appearance and unusual attitudes. That's when Dobby, agitated, tried to answer a question about what he had said in the boss room. He said something that sounded like "pank." The conversation quickly turned into laughter and incoherent words, making the human question the goblin's nature even more. Finally, Dobby revealed something that left him even more perplexed. The necklace the goblin carried was not just any accessory. He mentioned that the necklace contained a constellation and that it was a sacred item. The revelation left the human speechless. He then asked if he was a constellation, he asked, trying to grasp the magnitude of the situation. Dobby confirmed, revealing that the necklace contained a powerful entity named Penreek, a goblin god. He expressed his gratitude, promising to follow the human on his journey. What seemed to be a simple goblin now revealed itself as a key to something much greater and more complex. The difficulty of the mission and the surprise of having completed the 1st floor with such a high level of challenge, it did not go unnoticed. The human wondered if the difficulty of the tutorial varied depending on the class chosen, thinking about what it must be like for other participants like Heejun, who, being a regressor, was probably facing very different challenges. Soon, more sponsorship offers appeared before him. A new 5th class constellation, the Lord of the 5 Rings, offered a sponsorship contract, but for a moment he stopped to reflect. When he made a contract with the constellation on the 5th floor and appeared as a 1st class on the 1st floor, that made him question the true meaning of these contracts and the role of the constellations in his path within the Tower of Trials. Suya carefully observed the new scenario unfolding before him on the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials. The field of vision was now clearer, but the choice of path ahead had seemed crucial. A 4th path had appeared, and the pressure of time with the countdown decreasing made every decision even more important. The mission was simple, but the side effects of regression were starting to affect him, and he didn't know how much longer his strength would hold. Dobby, in turn, seemed uncertain. When asked which path to take, Suryuk made an enigmatic suggestion for Dobby to ask the god he served. Suryuk was surprised to realize that the little goblin had no intention of helping directly. Penreek won't tell you, said Dobby, as if it were a warning. It became clear that even with Dobby's help, the path was still uncertain. The choice they made now could be the key to success or failure, but the answer was still far from clear. The human looked at Dobby and asked once again which side they should follow. He insisted, hoping for a more concrete answer this time. The tension was rising, the journey was far from easy, and now the choice of path seemed a crucial test in an increasingly unpredictable scenario. As they followed the left path, Dobby's choice, but nothing felt right. The human felt guilty for putting Dobby in this situation, especially considering the goblin's vulnerability. He knew he needed to protect Dobby, but also regretted not taking the steel armor from the goblin paladin. Instructing Dobby to stay behind him, he soon realized the path was wrong. It doesn't feel like this is the way, he said, beginning to doubt. Dobby tried to maintain confidence, but the human's uncertainty only grew. When the terrain started to get steeper, the human suspected a trap. Before he could act, the ground gave way and he screamed, saying it was a trap. Both tried to avoid the imminent danger, knowing that the journey through the Tower of Trials would be even more difficult. Hee-jung faces the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials, where the path splits again. She instinctively chooses the path to the right, knowing the difficulty will increase. As she prepares for the challenges, she wonders if Suhyuk, another participant, is doing well, since the tutorial has become much harder. Hee-jung turns her thoughts to the past, where Kwon Suhyuk, after facing emotional struggles, went through the end of a relationship. Although he broke up with his ex, he still missed her and admitted that he loved her despite being betrayed. Meanwhile, he distracts himself by drinking, unaware of the concern of those around him. His conflicting emotions result in a mix of frustration and resentment. Hee-jung, in the middle of a fight against an orc, appears to be in trouble, with the enemy making threats and demonstrating considerable power. The girl, in turn, reacts with anger and determination, trying to focus and use her skills to face the threat. The tension increases as she prepares for a decisive battle, still with unspoken words for the enemy. Suhyuk, with Dobby on his back, runs desperately, trying to escape a nearly fatal situation. Dobby, frightened and complaining about the uncomfortable situation, blames Suhyuk, while both try to flee from the rock about to crush them. Suhyuk, focused on survival, speeds up even more, feeling the pressure of escaping in time. The tension peaks with Dobby nearly cursing Suhyuk as the rock rapidly approaches. After an intense escape, Soo-hyuk and Dabi manage to evade the crushing rock, but not without difficulty. Soo-hyuk is exhausted and nearly dying, but is saved by the regeneration provided by Dabi. The boy, still a little dazed, expresses his gratitude in a peculiar way, stating that survival was thanks to the goblin. After the chaos, Soo-hyuk decides they'll go to the right this time, but Dabi, with his impulsive nature, insists on going left. Both continue their journey, still shaken by the tension of the moment. The protagonist insisted on taking another path, but Dabi was persistent. And when Dabi touched the rock, an immense path suddenly opened in their direction. Soo-hyuk thanked him, amazed at what he saw. He had found the lightning mace of the great orc warrior Karaksh. Despite being old, it was a masterpiece wrapped in lightning without causing negative effects to the user. The bonus was excellent, a true find. However, before he could enjoy his discovery, he noticed something concerning. Before him, an orc had just awakened from its long slumber. The situation quickly became dangerous. The notification confirmed his suspicion. On the second floor of the Tower of Trials, he had found a hidden quest, the forgotten tomb of the great orc warrior Karaksh. The impact of this discovery would be reflected in performance calculations later. The tension increased. He knew it wouldn't be an easy battle. Before him, the imposing great orc warrior Karaksh rose with a deafening roar. His presence was overwhelming, and the tension in the air grew with each passing second. He realized the mace was closer to the orc than to him. A troubling thought crossed his mind. What if that giant creature grabbed the weapon? The fear quickly became reality when the monster, with no apparent consciousness, grabbed the mace and raised it into the air. The imminent impact seemed inevitable. Facing such a devastating attack, dodging could be a fatal mistake. The best strategy was to defend and endure the blow, preparing for the right opening to counterattack. The fight was becoming increasingly unfavorable. Karaksh was stronger and faster, and the difference in power was evident. His body trembled with the impact of the attacks, and electricity ran through his arm, leaving a persistent tingling sensation. He realized staying on the defensive wasn't an option. He needed to act before it was too late. Taking momentum, he decided to strike first, looking for any opening. However, the orc's overwhelming strength was impossible to contain directly. The only solution was to slightly deflect the enemy's blow, forcing him to miss. As soon as Karaksh made a mistake, it would be his chance to counterattack. Pain throbbed intensely throughout his body, making every movement a challenge. Before anything else, he needed to heal. He activated the Goblin Paladin's shield, a sturdy piece of equipment imbued with sacred power capable of granting level 2 healing. However, the excitement didn't last. The cooldown was 24 hours, and the healing spell simply didn't work. While processing the situation, Dabi remained distant, doing nothing useful. Frustration grew. If only he had come closer to help. The orc growled, warning of an attack from above. There was no more time for regrets. He would have to face Karaksh alone. The problem was clear. He was at a disadvantage in every way. Strength, speed, even equipment. He needed to find a strategy before it was too late. Watching closely, he realized Karaksh's attacks followed a simple pattern that would give him a chance. If he wanted to win, he'd have to take risks. With a defiant smile, he began provoking the orc, insulting him and trying to make him lose his temper. The strategy worked. Karaksh roared furiously and charged without thinking. He dodged at the last moment, avoiding the massive blow. But he knew dodging alone wouldn't lead to victory. When the enemy made a wide and exposed move, his only real chance to counterattack emerged. Taking advantage of an opening, he struck a quick blow. The attack was superficial, but it was a start. He needed to keep pressing until he found a weak point. A cry of despair echoed across the battlefield. The situation was getting more critical. Without another option, he called out to Dabi, ordering him to distract the enemy. However, the little companion responded with pure confusion. Dabi hesitated, not fully understanding the gravity of the moment. He could no longer afford to hesitate. The confidence he placed in his plan was building, and he knew now was the time to act. Would you like me to help adapt this into a game scene or a comic script? With the distance created between him and Karaksh, the orc's attack pattern became clear. It was a sequence that could be interrupted with precision. He readied his shield, aware that at the exact moment, he would need to throw it to make the mace slip. The impact was inevitable, but by making the right move, he forced Karaksh to raise his arm and unbalance his stance. That left the orc vulnerable. With the arm raised, the next blow would come toward the ground, and he didn't miss the opportunity. Taking a step back to gain more space, he positioned himself. At that moment, it was his chance. He launched into the attack, exploiting every visible weakness in the monster, determined not to let the opportunity slip. The protagonist gripped the weapon's handle tightly, feeling the tension in the air. When he finally saw the creature appear, his expression was one of frustration. Dabi, with his radiant face full of enthusiasm, celebrated excitedly. To him, the human was amazing. However, the protagonist only sighed, realizing his expectation had been naive. He shook his head, tired. Deep down, he knew expecting anything useful from Dabi was a mistake. The small creature, noticing the change in the human's expression, tilted his head in confusion, wondering why he looked that way. The protagonist remained silent for a moment, staring at the ground. Then he finally answered with a downcast look because it had finally dawned on him. After an intense battle, the protagonist finally defeated the great orc warrior, who had been corrupted by demons. the system notified that this victory would impact his future performance calculations. Before him, the reward gleamed, the lightning mace of Karaksh, a true masterpiece enveloped in lightning that did not harm its wielder. Upon picking it up, he felt as though the weapon had been tailor-made for his hand. Dabi, always cheerful, expressed his admiration for the new weapon, praising its design. In response, the protagonist tried to be polite, saying that Dabi's weapon was cool too. However, faced with the creature's curious look, he ended up admitting that it was actually just a random piece of junk. Before they could continue the conversation, Dabi shouted a warning. A new danger was approaching, and orc was advancing directly toward them. The protagonist barely had time to catch his breath after defeating Karaksh, as a new enemy appeared. The orc warrior, a fierce and foul-smelling creature, charged with unfriendly intentions. The system warned that being captured by him would bring terrible consequences. To make matters worse, more enemies began to gather around him. It was as if, right after defeating the boss, he had been thrown into another relentless battle. However, when wielding the lightning mace, he realized how powerful it was. Each blow was devastating, and the tide of battle quickly began to turn in his favor. Still, he wondered if there was any more hidden peace on that floor. But upon seeing the fury of his opponents, he concluded that the only great reward there was the mace. With no patience to prolong the fight, he decided to finish them all at once. After the battle, he turned to Dabi and asked which path they should take next. Without hesitation, the small creature shouted to go to the right. Curiously, Dabi was surprised to see that this time the human didn't question his choice. The protagonist just moved forward, ready for whatever came next. Stuyep confirmed to Dabi that he now truly trusted him, but the little creature, inflated with pride, responded enthusiastically, claiming he had always been trustworthy. Before he could react, Dabi ran ahead, determined to go first. The protagonist tried to stop him, warning about the danger, but it was already too late. 4 intense battles followed as he advanced. The protagonist wondered how his companions were doing. He believed that Hee-jung, with her determination, was probably doing well. Likewise, Soo-hyuk, with his natural talent, should also be doing fine. Now facing a new trial, a message appeared that left no room for hesitation. Defeat all enemies, time was against him. Less than 5 hours remained to complete the challenge. As he approached the next room, the system gave him the option to enter the boss chamber. He turned to Dabi and asked if he was ready. Without hesitation, the little creature confirmed. The battle began. The timer showed only 10 seconds until the final confrontation. Observing the enemies, the protagonist noticed something worrying. There was a mage. He quickly concluded that if he wanted to increase his chances of survival, he would have to eliminate that opponent first. The battle was about to begin. The protagonist quickly assessed the situation. Even if he left Dabi to deal with 2 orc warriors, the burden on him would still be immense. Only a few seconds remained before the confrontation. At the last moment, he decided that his priority should be to protect Dabi. After all, he was a priest and essential to his survival. The timer hit 0 and the battle began. However, something strange happened. The enemies did not advance. Soo-hyuk was confused. Suddenly, one of the orc warriors attacked his own ally. Surprised, he tried to understand what was going on. It was then that Dabi mentioned Karaksh. He realized the enemies were reacting to his weapon. For some reason, wielding the mace of the ancient orc warrior seemed to have identified him as a leader or figure of authority. Without needing to fight, he completed the floor's mission. The system recognized his achievement and moved him to the waiting room, informing him that all enemies had been defeated without him needing to shed blood. With the hidden mission completed, he was rewarded with significant increases in his attributes. In addition, he acquired new abilities including pain tolerance, natural healing, and electrical resistance. Thus, without even raising his weapon, he emerged victorious from this unexpected challenge. The protagonist enters the world of the orcs with his faithful squire. Through the completion of the hidden mission, the next selective mission could be initiated. The challenges involving selective occultism were considerably more difficult than conventional missions. Soo-hyuk realized that the difficulty of the previous mission was nothing compared to what he was about to face. He then recalled the reminders displayed by the status window, yet he couldn't believe the words of the Tower of Approval. If the tower had eliminated the elf as it should have, the protagonist would have to choose between 2 distinct paths. One inconsequential choice, and his entire destiny would be altered. The sign constantly warned of the passage of time, showing that the young man would not be able to reverse his choices. The option then appeared to give up the hidden mission and advance to the 3rd floor. With only 3 seconds remaining, Soo-hyuk reflected that the risk matched the potential level increase. Excited together with Dabi, they finally decided to face the mission. The hidden mission began, and the allotted time was 59 minutes and 60 seconds. As they walked through the realm, an orc appeared in front of them carrying a huge stone on its back. Soo-hyuk realized that the giant was pushing alone a stone nearly 10 times bigger than himself. In doubt, while observing that scene, he noticed there was no explanation in the notification window. The hidden mission to free the orcs had just begun, and the remaining time was already 46 minutes. The protagonist began to question the name of the mission and noticed the creature's sad expression. As he approached the robust being, he felt that it didn't seem to be an enemy. Turning his back to Dabi, he asked who that giant was. Groaning with exhaustion, the orc asked if he was to be his liberator. The orc, seeing the protagonist in front of him, asked if the boy could kindly hold the stone for a few moments. Suspicious, the boy questioned who that being really was. The protagonist asked why the giant was holding that stone and couldn't let it go. With a sad look, the giant explained that if he dropped it, he would lose everything, and he couldn't take that risk. Not understanding that vague answer, the protagonist asked why he simply didn't move away from the stone in a normal way. Subic also asked how he could trust the creature and listen to him. Silence took over the scene. Turning again to look behind him, he questioned whether this was just a foolish trial or if it had some deeper meaning. The elf, stunned and not understanding anything, remained silent. Frustrated by Dabi's silence and the situation itself, the protagonist mocked the scene. Realizing the scope of the path he had to follow, he decided to hold the stone to allow the giant to rest. Pitying the creature, Suyov dropped his shield and weapon on the ground and decided to help it. He placed it on his back and bent over to take the weight. Seeing the smile on the creature's face, the boy realized he should not have taken that action. That's when he realized it was a trap. The mission wasn't called Liberation of the Orc for nothing. In this case, liberation required the protagonist's life. If he lost the stone or his concentration for even a second, he would be crushed by the rock. The giant, seeing the situation, began to thank his savior. Enraged, Suya thought he couldn't even curse the creature due to the crushing weight he was carrying. Touching the boy's shoulders, the orc asked him to wait just a moment and to not let go of the rock under any circumstances. The protagonist, furious for being deceived, looked at the situation with indignation. The creature then raised his hands toward Dabi, signaling that they should leave. The boy, not understanding anything, wondered if he was really being betrayed like that. Before he could get more irritated, all he could think was that he didn't want the elf to leave because he needed his help. He knew he wouldn't last many hours with a stone on his back, as the weight was already beginning to make him lean forward. Using all the strength in his body to remain stable, he felt close to the brink of death. 42 minutes had already passed since the start of the mission, and the boy could only think about his friend's betrayal. With tears in his eyes, another 20 minutes went by with no sign of the orc or Dabi returning to the place. When he least expected it, the creature reappeared before him with glowing green eyes. Thanking the protagonist for being his liberator, both characters mocked the human's hard work. The orc explained that he had been trapped with the stone for so long that he had nearly lost all of his life until his glorious salvation. Angry, Sayuki could only think about how much he wanted to make them pay for the whole situation. Placing a jewel around the protagonist's neck, the orc deeply thanked him for his attitude and bravery. Then he leaned toward the rock, rested against it, and lifted it onto his back again. The protagonist collapsed, exhausted, to the ground. Hanging from his neck was the necklace of will, a symbol of liberation given after the orc's freedom was recognized. Completely exhausted, Sayuki gave thanks for having the weight lifted off his back. The orc then questioned the gratitude, saying it was a reward for the boy's good intentions. At that moment, the protagonist quickly looked at the orc's hand and noticed that until then he hadn't been wearing a ring. Tired but recovering, the protagonist called for the elf so they could leave. Sayuki looked back and saw that the goblin was holding his sword. The protagonist, in disbelief, said he had seen the rock move. He asked the goblin if he had seen it too. Not understanding anything, Dabi asked what Sayuki was talking about. With a reflective look, the protagonist wondered if he had misunderstood something. The selective hidden mission had been completed, allowing them to advance to the third floor. The characters would be moved to the waiting room once their achievements were calculated. Before moving on to the next mission, the protagonist asked the elf to wait. Stibuki approached the orc again and began to push the rock with all his strength. Throwing all of his body weight into it, he tried to move it at least a centimeter. The green-eyed giant, watching, didn't understand anything. With a plan in mind, the protagonist wanted to be useful, even if just for a moment. The orc then thanked the liberator and said that one day he would manage to repay him. Sayuki and Dabi were abducted and thrown into the waiting room. The sign indicated that the selective hidden mission had been completed. Despite his weakness, the protagonist played a crucial role at that moment, facing a crushing danger. The accumulated achievements totaled 17,432 points, mysteriously added in the waiting room. The strength and agility attributes were completed. The bloodless victory in the boss hall resulted in a skill attribute increase to level 2. The hero also acquired new strengths, including battle concentration and level 5 intuition. The signs indicated that the characters had completed the level 3 mission. Access to the community climbers leaderboard was granted. Arriving in a huge room along with Dabi, the characters reached the 4th floor of the Tower of Trials. The remaining time was 9 hours and 59 minutes as indicated in the tutorial. It was recommended that all characters rest. Tsukyuki, lowering his head with a sense of accomplishment, clenched his fists tightly. It was a moment of victory, and both celebrated the power of finally having completed that stage. The goblin showed a glass of water sitting on the table. Annoyed, the boy questioned whether he would have to carry that book around everywhere. The game was different now. At that moment, the hero already had permissions for 2nd and 3rd class constellations as sponsors. However, the boy didn't seem to care much about that. He just wanted to eat because he was starving. Amazed by the abundance of food in the place, Dabi wasted no time and began devouring everything. Smiling in response to the elf, the protagonist mocked, saying he couldn't eat that much. Looking at the scoreboard ahead, Palm noticed that he was in 1st place in total points. The other scores were all private, so he didn't have full access to the information. The panel offered the option to make the scores public. Looking more closely, he saw that Heejung's score was slightly below his. He felt more at ease knowing that his partner was doing well. Giving himself a clumsy slap on the head, the protagonist acknowledged that he should focus more on himself. Dabi, ever helpful, gave the boy a big slap on the face as a sign of encouragement for that action. The slap left the protagonist completely sore and stunned, prompting him to retaliate by smacking the elf's head. Suyuki did the math and realized that fourth place had only 802 points. He wondered how someone could be 43,000 points behind him. Another question that lingered in his mind was why everyone was also on the 5th floor. Placing his hands on his wrist, he realized that he now had access to the community and could check the available targets. The community was composed of various people who sent messages to each other, commenting on the levels. Noticing the lack of organization in the group, the hero saw that apparently everyone was on the final level. Heejung then decided to send a request to the protagonist. At that moment, the protagonist was happy with the message and quickly decided to accept it. The girl's message asked if the boy had reached the waiting room after the 3rd floor. Suyuki explained that after completing the hidden mission on the 2nd floor, he was transferred directly to the 4th. The girl asked if the protagonist was tired because of the dreams. Heejung commented that the tutorial was extremely difficult without the status window, leaving the boy intrigued. He soon realized that the actions he had taken were of greater difficulty, according to his friend's logic. The girl let slip that she had given up on the boss of the 2nd floor, and that if it weren't for the boy, she wouldn't have made it. Then the girl apologized, explaining that she really couldn't overcome that stage, but promised she would try harder. The boy quickly replied that it wasn't a problem and that she didn't mean to apologize. Mocking the situation, Suyuki realized that the girl was a regressor for not having been able to complete her stages. Laughing, he noticed that finding that hidden piece had really been a stroke of luck. The elf then observed the human's expression with strangeness. Heejung continued the conversation, asking what Suyuki's total score was. Embarrassed, he replied that he had approximately 44,000 points. In shock, the girl exclaimed upon hearing his score, and the protagonist confirmed. She quickly replied, stating that the boy was really playing on another level. However, the hero didn't understand what Heejung had said. She didn't go into detail on the matter and said she would tell him as soon as he could access the shop on the 4th level. The protagonist asked if she had any tips for the upcoming floors, the 4th and the 5th. The girl apologized, explaining that she had only heard some messages about them but wasn't certain of anything. Kwon, curious, asked who she had received that information from. The girl said she would explain everything later when they met, stating that it was all a matter of time. The next tutorial was scheduled to start in 9 hours and 14 minutes. It was recommended that all participants get a good night's rest. Before saying goodbye, she suggested that the boy rest first and talk later, as they both needed to be in good shape. Agreeing with her, Suyuki considered checking the community. Right after, the girl sent a message saying that if he thought about accessing the community, he'd quickly get sick of it. Surprised, the protagonist wondered how she knew what he was about to do since he hadn't even mentioned his intention. The chat and the messages sent now worked normally. The setting was the 6th floor of the tower, where rest was most recommended for everyone. Suyuki complained that his rest time seemed to decrease as he climbed the levels. Next to him, Dabi was sleeping. In the chat, Heejung was happy to see the boy and asked how many points he had earned. The boy replied saying he had only 15,000 points and felt like some were missing. It was explained that because the boy managed to complete the tutorial without the status window, he could acquire new clothes. Trying on the most sophisticated outfits available, the hero was astonished. The portal notified the possibility of creating a new group on the 6th floor and informed them that they could choose a climber. With shining eyes, the boy could only think about meeting Heejung as they would finally reunite. The hidden names of the constellations were revealed, showing who had signed a contract with Kwon. The constellation he obtained was Iron Thunder, the master of every place she goes. Seo joked that the names weren't very appealing, and that's why he didn't want to sign the contract. Klo, with a disdainful look, said that if it were the opposite, he would have made a terrible choice. The other participants didn't like Klo's relevance, yet she still complimented, even asking if she had acquired any 5th-class constellation. The girl remained silent with a look of revolt. The man looked at his daughter and asked with whom she had signed the contract. The girl explained that with a 1st-class constellation, she could make one of the god greater than 1st class. Kwon commented that he had also signed a contract with a 1st-class lord, following the same logic as Harem. He asked Sujung and Raejung who they had signed their contracts with. Raejung replied that she was just observing and had liked the name. Leaning close to Kwon's ear, Raejung said she still kept her 1st-class constellation. Meanwhile, Sujung touched the protagonist's chest. The conversation was interrupted by Siu, who asked if anyone really knew what a sponsorship contract was and what its benefits were. The protagonist replied that he was in no hurry and that they would soon understand what it all meant. Curious, Kwon asked what everyone thought the displayed ownership percentage meant. He wondered if it represented something positive. Kwon realized that he had previously ignored that detail and was now trying to understand what it was about. A status window appeared mentioning information about the constellations. Before the protagonist could ask Soo-jung anything, she interrupted him, saying she would explain later. Chloe, irritated, asked the group if they really intended to stay in that room forever. Ri-jung, with a mocking tone, suggested that everyone should leave there as soon as possible. Chloe argued that it was better to come up with a plan before leaving the building, as that place clearly wasn't safe. The old man peacefully agreed, saying that discussing where to go was essential before departing. Hee-jung stated that with her clairvoyance ability, she knew that staying in one place too long meant being in constant danger. The revelation about her clairvoyance ability surprised the group, and Kwon was impressed. She explained that the danger lay in the fact that if they stayed still, monsters would eventually invade the place. Seo asked where they should go and what Ri-jung had seen in her vision. With seriousness, the girl replied that they should go to Chungmuro Station. The old man, with a doubtful expression, asked where that station was. Ri-jung praised Kwon, saying that he had discovered a hidden mission on his own. She mentioned that the group had the first and second place holders in the ranking and that people would find a mission on the 6th floor. Kwon agreed, excited by the prospect of adventure, while Seo also had no objections. Before moving forward, Hee-jung made sure everyone was prepared. United, the group set out in search of the station. Leading the others, the dark-haired girl took responsibility for the rear guard. Upon opening the door, they came face to face with a zombie, which Kwon had to attack immediately to protect the group. Bob, using his abilities, began healing everyone's wounds on the spot. With no time to waste, the team started running toward the tracks. They kept running until they managed to enter the station. Upon noticing the large number of monsters, they decided to hide under the tracks. They waited for a few moments, hoping the monsters would move on so they could escape. Relieved, Sue finally managed to breathe without fearing death, while Kwon congratulated the team. Suddenly, Sue started a conversation with Kwon, saying that when he was younger, he loved reading adventure stories. Kwon asked why he was saying that at such a random moment. The old man commented that although he had liked the stories as a child, in reality, they weren't so interesting. The man then asked Kwon that if anything happened between him and his daughter, Kwon should save Heron. So Yuki looked straight into the man's eyes and affirmed that if it were up to him, he would save everyone and ensure no one got hurt. Soon after, Hee-jung signaled something suspicious ahead. Looking more closely, they saw a large egg emitting intense lights that lit up the surrounding area. With a doubtful expression, Siu asked if that really was an egg. The object was, in fact, a corrupted egg. They discussed the items scattered around the egg. Hee-jung said that she and Suyuki would pick up the items. The girl added that they only found the items thanks to their help and that without it, they wouldn't have reached that place. Clue, completely hysterical, thought it was unfair that they were taking everything without even discussing it with the team. Cole agreed, saying that they had only made it that far thanks to the two leaders. As they approached the egg, the blonde boy asked if that meant the beginning of a hidden mission. Rijun shook her head, stating that the hidden mission would begin the moment the egg was broken. Without hesitation, the old man suggested the team break the object right away. So Yuki quickly raised his arms, ready to strike the egg. Sounds of grunting and screaming tormented the area, and they realized the building had been invaded by civilians and zombies. Before breaking the object, Suyuki suggested they deal with that situation first. On the 6th floor, the first corrupted egg of Queen Seraphim was found in Area 54. The hidden missions from the other areas were discarded. With the intention of dominating the zombies, the old man charged into the attack with an ironic tone. Suyuki commented that he was merely romanticizing a fight, finally confirming his suspicions. After being rescued, the zombies bravely thanked the soldiers. Kwon asked how they had managed to reach the underground with such limited abilities. One of the zombies explained that they were on their way to Shujimuro Station but encountered the zombies and fled. Kwon questioned the name of the place, and the civilian confirmed that Shujimuro Station was the home of all the zombies present. Trying to peek at the egg behind the protagonist, Kwon asked the civilian not to meddle where he wasn't called. With his hands raised in a peaceful gesture, the civilian said he didn't mean to offend and asked if the team was heading to Shujimuro. Seo hugged the civilian, confirming that was indeed their destination. Suyuki and Hee-jung exchanged looks, silently agreeing that the civilian was very suspicious and both thought they should execute him right then. Full of rage and anguish, Kwon hated the civilian for having murdered his companions from behind. Hee-jung admitted that she also wanted to kill him at that moment. The civilian tried to invite them to visit his home, but Kwon refused, saying he could manage on his own. Survival was estimated at 48 hours, but the team only had 37 hours left. They repeated the question about the hidden mission involving the egg, but were certain the object was terrifying. The girl looked back and asked the protagonist to break the object already. With his eyes fixed on the egg, the hero realized that he shouldn't break it. Hee-jung didn't understand and asked why. The old man emphasized both of their clairvoyant abilities, and Cole agreed that the egg shouldn't be broken there. The protagonist mentioned his sixth sense ability and asked the goblin to purify the object. Dabi promptly extended his hands, casting a blue spell over the greenish egg. After purification, the object began to move involuntarily. everyone channeled their energy in a form of purification. The egg began to thrash, emitting a blue light around it. Its appearance returned to normal, and its guardian wasn't far away. The princess explained that in the future, she had foreseen in her mind when the egg was broken, there was a hidden key inside it. The murmurs began, and Heejung asked Suyuki to proceed to the location. She screamed for the team not to touch the egg until they returned. Upon arriving at the library and closing the doors, she called the protagonist and warned him that the mission foretold in her clairvoyance had changed. In the mission, she knew the queen would appear within 24 hours and the egg needed to be hidden in a safe place. The biggest problem was that even working together, they had no chance against the queen in the place where the egg appeared. At that, the hero pointed out that if they defeated the queen, the rewards would be incredible. He asked why they didn't just give the egg to the queen. Heejung replied that the egg was unusual. Kwon mocked her, asking if she hadn't considered that, and said he had a great idea. He joked, touching the princess's face, commenting that witches usually didn't use their brains. Angry, the girl asked him to repeat the comment. Laughing, Kwon stated that he didn't become a sorcerer because he was dumb, trying to avoid further conflict. The panel indicated that survival should last for the next 48 hours, with only 37 hours remaining. The protagonist asked worriedly if there would be a problem giving the egg to the queen. Heejung answered that the problem would be if the egg really belonged to her. She explained that the creature was not corrupted and was only looking for the humans who had exterminated its species. The plan was to separate until the queen appeared. If everything went wrong, they should flee within the next 24 hours. Upon returning to the area, the group discussed whether they were ready to finish what they had started. Kwon asked if the idea of giving the egg to the queen came up suddenly. Chloe said she didn't want to continue with the group. Then, unbothered, the princess stated that Chloe wasn't obligated to go. Paying little attention to the incident, Kwon led everyone toward the adventure. Before leaving, Heejung returned and said she had forgotten something and wouldn't take long. Seo interrupted Kwon and said that sometimes women keep secrets and need to resolve their own matters. After a few minutes, she returned. Now the queen would appear randomly in the area. The panel warned everyone to be careful. A huge creature with intense purple energy appeared in the place. Heejung warned the leader that the adventure was about to begin. Everyone prepared bravely. On the 6th floor in Area 54, the egg was not broken. At that moment, the hidden mission was discarded. The new hidden mission, Lost World of the Queen, began with a starting score of 5,000 points. On the 6th floor of Area 54, instead of a fake one, the real Queen Seraphine appeared. The protagonist walked through the blood-stained room with his men. He reflected that since the last time he had passed through there were no bodies in the area. Commenting, Heejung said only 4 hours had passed and yet many men were already dead. Looking back, the protagonist asked if the girl wasn't afraid, as she showed no panic on her face. Quickly, the girl replied about her familiarity with the area and that her only concern was the boy. A monster appeared in the place, attacking all the civilians. Desperate, Heejung asked Kwon if he had the ring and the elixir. He promptly retorted, saying yes. Stabbed by the creature, the civilian desperately cried out for help. The monster made strange sounds intended to terrify. The creature was called the Corrupted Queen and was accompanied by her corrupted guards. Making a deafening noise, the civilian only screamed for the characters to run as fast as they could. With terror imprinted on his face, he despaired, saying those were real monsters. Before he could finish his sentence, the Corrupted Queen made a diagonal cut across the captured boy. Faced with the scene, the protagonist was stunned by the sheer act of cruelty witnessed. Silent and observing everything, his guard asked if that creature was the queen. Suyuki, completely enraged, said that the guard had mentioned they weren't corrupted and wanted to know why they were. Heejung, perplexed, wondered about the reason for such a sudden change. The girl then began to motivate everyone to attack the creatures. Curious, Kwon questioned himself. Euphoric, the girl said that her attributes were more than enough for the situation. The protagonist then began to underestimate himself. Happy, Heejung reminded Suyuki that he hadn't had a real fight since the 4th floor and that he needed to fight. Distressed, the blue-haired girl said that wasn't a good idea. The goblin beside her commented ironically that humans were scared. Murmurs among the guards about Heejung's words questioned whether the boy should really listen to her. One of the guards replied saying they should flee. Reflective, Kwon realized that even for him, that fight would be difficult. Confident, Heejung said they could kill all the guards and still use the cores on the boy. Radiating confidence, she looked at Suyeon, reminding her that she could foresee the future. Confident, she asked if everyone believed in her words. Suyuki gathered courage and decided to give the situation a chance, facing his own fears. Asking for everyone's attention, he led the attack. Running toward 2 of the guards, he swiftly passed his blade between them. His companions then shouted for him to focus on the queen and they would take care of the rest. The possessed being screamed toward the boy, who protected himself with his shield. Raising one of its hands, it struck blows against the boy's shield, who quickly counterattacked. Suyuki, distressed, shouted for Heejung to throw the egg. The girl screamed and signaled to throw the object. Raising his hands, Suyuki managed to catch the thrown object. Drawing the monster's attention, he lifted the egg in one hand. Mockingly waving, he asked the queen to take a good look. Furious, the queen commanded an attack toward the boy. Quickly, the boy pretended to throw the object to one of his companions. One of the guards signaled that he could catch it. The goblin and the blue-haired girl screamed together. The queen went mad at the situation. Suyuki realized the egg had caught the creature's attention. Barely managing to hold back the monster, Suyuki asked for cover to grab the shield. Before the creature could continue its attacks, the protagonist was warned. Quickly grabbing his shield for protection, the boy counterattacked with his sword, cutting one of the corrupted queen's limbs. Asking everyone to follow up with attacks again, he managed to aim at the weak spot to stop the incoming strike. Realizing that one of her legs was cut, the queen grew distressed. Sweat ran down her face in a sign of despair. Suyuki ran toward the being, launching a powerful attack. The creature, trying to defend itself, fell to the ground disarmed. Suyuki ran, realizing that was the moment for the final blow. Before he could deliver the last strike, Heejung shouted, stopping him, warning that purification needed to be done at that moment. With a puzzled expression, the boy remembered he had to purify the queen. Yuan and the goblin sat around the creature. Suyuki asked his team what should be done. Heejung commented that the queen apparently had already been purified, but that they should take her to the media center first. The boy gave the order for the guards to carry the being. Grateful, they didn't complain. 1 hour before the team's fight against the queen. At that moment, a pale female hand rang the doorbell. A voice at the end questioned why the acquaintance who had just left had returned. Upon answering the door, a dark-haired boy's body was charred by an unexpected explosion that took over the place. The screams of the house's inhabitants were loud, wondering if someone had invaded the space. The dark-haired boy, his chest completely scorched, fell to the ground, shouting if the woman was crazy. When the residents asked what she was doing, the pale-skinned hand took the form of a woman, saying that was just a traitor who deserved the death he got. Threatened, the young man asked the woman not to come any closer. The mysterious lady began speaking about Club Bench, a racist supremacist who had poisoned allied species on the 16th floor. With disgust, before he could finish insulting the woman, the blue-haired boy questioned what she was talking about. Irritated, she said they were scum and had pushed her teammate while fleeing. One of the boys began shouting, asking if the pale mystery woman had any proof of her accusations. The second resident pleaded his innocence. Saying she wouldn't talk much, the woman said they wouldn't understand anyway and began to manipulate fire with her hands. The current scene was about purification. The queen awakened with her eyes completely wide. Happy to have finally awakened, the queen acknowledged her saviors. Suyuki joked that she was lucky to have regained consciousness. The queen said she had regained it since the stairs, but still wanted to surprise them. The guard joked that she should have said something earlier since she was quite heavy. The queen extended her hands, asking how she could get her children back. Heejun then handed the egg to its rightful owner. Grateful, she asked what she should do now, as the egg fit into a kind of hole. Upon placing the egg inside the hole, Suyuki asked himself what the queen was doing. Heejun wasn't sure, only asked that they not lower their guard since anything could happen in that place. The egg was inserted and a green light began to appear. Then a cute little creature emerged from inside the object, making some murmuring noises. The queen extended her hand, taking her child, thanking nonstop for being such a beautiful child. With the child in her arms, she said she should finish their work. The creature that unexpectedly emerged from the object stretched its hands and inserted a key into the lock above the hole. A congratulatory plaque appeared, stating they had completed the 6th floor and that points and rewards were calculated. Suyuki wondered about his points since they had so many. How could they have run out? Heejun explained that sometimes when a hidden mission is completed, it happens instantly. The plaque again stated they had completed a hidden mission in the lost world of the Seraphim, calculating the reward points. Suyuki mentioned the names of the creatures they had faced. The queen then asked the protagonist the name of the brave warrior who saved her. Kwon introduced himself and Heejun asked if everything was alright. Completely grateful, the queen asked how she should express her thanks. She said she would pray for her saviors so they wouldn't lose their world like she had lost hers. Kwon felt completely proud and grateful. The plaque said that 22,732 points had been added as a reward, and the total score was 42,028. Then the woman, along with her child, extended her hands and waved goodbye. A new board appeared informing them about the hidden mission and that all attributes had gained 3 points. In the community group, several messages appeared with everyone praising Kwon. The boy kept wondering why so many compliments, feeling shy about it. Snoring and in a deep sleep, Dabi slept beside the protagonist. Kwon analyzed that the sleep was due to consuming the enhancement potion. Kurin had bought the potion and asked if she should take it right then. Heejun confirmed, asking if the old man had also bought it. He promptly responded, saying he had also just bought it at that moment. Jokingly, Kwon said that Rijung was taking care of everyone. Rijung thought that even if Kwon was the leader, she could help since she was a regressor. The group leader has the power to expel or invite members. If used incorrectly, something really bad could happen. Suyuki commented to Heejung about opening a new spot for a new team member. He questioned what actions they should take. The girl replied that it should be left empty because with fewer members they would earn more reward points. The boy responded by asking if it wasn't actually better to have another member. The girl asked why. Quickly rebutting, Heejung questioned the motive of the decision, asking why, since up until now they even had a goblin. Without questioning much, he asked if there was anything new to acquire on that floor. Heejung wanted to know the total score achieved so far. Kwon promptly replied that he had a total of 42,000 points. Indignant, she thought it was a lot, but acknowledged that he had done most of the work, and that in any case there was no need to buy anything now since he still had the elixir. Suyuki remembered the command he was given not to consume that seraphim elixir. The girl added that they still had apples and that all of his armor was still good for use. Simply agreeing, the protagonist said it was fine. Hee-jung said she would buy the necessary things herself and that he should save his points and not spend them. Indignant, he said he also wanted to buy something since he had a lot of points. Smiling sweetly, Hee-jung denied it, saying to ask for points only if he ran out. Suyuki was curious about what inhabited the 7th floor and asked to learn more about it. The girl playfully replied that it was a secret and that she wouldn't talk about the tower for now, except for a few essential things. Kwon, with his hands on his head, questioned why he couldn't know. Hee-jung believed he should trust more in his intuition. Joking, she said that if she died out of nowhere, he would have to suffer alone. The protagonist, irritated, said she wouldn't die. Smiling, the young woman said it was already time to sleep a bit because that was just a silly comment. She advised the boy to drink the potion. The protagonist placed his hands behind his head, agreeing, and then asked her to rest as well. Suyup recalled Hee-jung's words about her death in her previous life. He wondered how she was feeling about that. Widening his eyes, the protagonist realized how Hee-jung could know about her own death on the 91st floor if she was certain of her arrival on the 94th. Downcast and perplexed, he couldn't figure out how she knew he had reached the 94th floor if he had died on the 9th. Wanting to ask the girl, the boy looked down and realized she had already fallen asleep. Touching the elixir before he could rest a little, he decided to drink it. Then he consumed the elixir and as a result began to feel the power of the seraphim in his body. The approved challenger increased absorption speed, strength, agility, and lives. Iron Fur level 2 achieved. The next day, Kwon and Suyuki's group was moved to the 7th floor. Kwon, along with his faithful squire Dabi, were both armed. Suyuki was already at hunter status and his location was near the Tower of Trials. There were some negative and question mark signs which made the character wonder what that was next to the possession. The team had already managed to climb to the 7th floor and were welcomed by the haunted forest. One of the team members bragged about his increased strength and asked everyone if it was because of the elixir. Hee-jung confirmed, thanking her mother. Aggressive tiger men came in this forest. Kill at least 3 tiger men, and if you pass 5, the king of the tiger men will appear. If the tiger king appears, you must either kill him or provide a good amount of sacrifices. Time remaining, 5 hours and 54 minutes. Suyuki mocked the status window, joking and appreciating its kindness. The girl quickly put her hand over her mouth, asking everyone to be silent. Strange noises in the forest emerged, and everyone had questioning looks, wondering what was happening. Hee-jung then said that phase had already started and that everyone should stay alert. An orange ghost mocked the death of one of the boys who died completely soaked in urine. Another ghost asked what all of that meant. The orange soul wondered why Suyuki was so strong. It said he was the hope and light of the dead, as even the dead knew of his fame. The bluish being questioned the need to know that human. Greenish and older, the oldest spirit beside him spoke of his long-standing interest in Suyuki. Mocking the premature death of the green ghosts, the blue one disrespected him. The soul responded that both the 1st and the 6th floor were the same and had the same level. Stopping the discussion between the 2 ghosts, the 3rd one asked for silence because he wanted to watch Suyuki hunting the queen. The others were amazed by the protagonist's bravery. Envying the boy's abilities, the soul claimed that if it were in his place, it would have succeeded too. One of the soldiers asked Hee-jung how they should act to win that level. The girl replied that she couldn't use clairvoyance whenever she wanted. Astonished, the soldier fully understood. Looking back, the protagonist felt happy because Hee-jung wanted them to improve without depending on her abilities. Suyuki pointed out that they needed to kill 3 tiger men, so they had to go after some. Cole showed difficulty in finding 3 tiger men in just 6 hours. Mocking the boy's fear, the old man suggested that he go after the tiger men himself since he had a good sense. With an awkward smile, Cole replied that when it came to senses, Suyuki easily won. Throwing the question to the group, he asked what they thought killing 5 meant. With a doubtful tone, Hee-jung said that either they should kill the king or make a sacrifice. She wondered if the sacrifice had to be a human or not. The soldier, with a serious tone, said he couldn't believe that was happening and the team had just been formed. Cole, with a questioning air, asked if the tower was trying to separate the whole group. The old man wondered what all of that meant. He shared with the other members his thoughts that with the leader's strength, they were perhaps being evaluated based on the achievement score. Nodding, the other warrior agreed. Suyuki completely agreed, saying that if the team didn't have good chemistry, they would succumb to the chaos of the floor they were on. With doubtful eyes, he noticed a strange noise. The old man then, with an exclamation look, hinted that Suyuki was that kind of person. Completely indignant, Suyuki questioned the old man, saying he wasn't that kind of person. Quickly changing his expression, the old man said it was just a joke as he was poked by the blue-haired girl. Hiram tossed in the air whether the group should also worry about that. The goblin promptly responded, asking what they were talking about. Admiring the staff, the girl said that if the king of the tiger men appeared, Kong would be perfectly capable of defeating the boy. The man praised their leader, recounting the boy's feat of defeating Queen Seraphina on the 6th floor in a very easy and brave way. Then the blonde boy agreed, saying he had defeated her with just 2 strikes. However, he wondered if the Tiger King would be stronger. Trying to reassure his leader, Quan stated that the king wouldn't suddenly become stronger. With a concerned look, he emphasized that they should consider all possible scenarios because he didn't intend to sacrifice anyone. With teary eyes, the soldiers drew their swords, showing courage. Bravely, he declared that they should begin the search for the Tiger King. Everyone agreed and set off excitedly for the hunt. Tsuruki suggested they move in a straight line to quickly locate the Tiger Men. With a furrowed brow, he assured them it would no longer be necessary to search for them. Tiger roars echoed through the area as 2 of them appeared to attack the team. Kong shouted for everyone to prepare for combat. The roar of the tigers was strong and fierce, indicating they were ready for battle. They noticed that the tigers attacked in waves, alternating targets. To avoid discontent among teammates, he reminded the group they only needed to defeat 5 of them and withstand the time. Preparing for battle, a boy warned them to be cautious not to kill more than necessary. Behind him, a bald soldier stated that he would stay by his side because he knew he would need support. The 2 warriors advanced determinedly into the attack. They split up, each facing a different tiger. The leader then ordered everyone to follow the indicated direction. With skill, the old man declared he would protect Tsuki's rear. The tigers began advancing toward the team, trying to attack and eliminate them. A warning reminded them that at least 3 tiger men should be defeated. The plaque reappeared to remind them that killing more than 3 or surpassing 5 would summon the king. No tiger man had yet been killed. Suyuki struck the silhouette of a tiger and killed one of the 3 present with his sword. Cole asked him to slow down, and Suyuki asked if it was because of Hurin and Dabi. Confirming, he explained they were already exhausted from running. Hurin and the goblin also asked for caution. Suyuki was annoyed by the situation. With the tiger men attacking, the leader ordered everyone to use the vitality spell. Both members affirmed their understanding. The mission plaque appeared again. Cole struck the tiger man from the left while another soldier questioned the number of enemies. Hurin warned of a tiger man ready to attack on the right. The tiger man roared at the old man, but Suyuki leaped in to protect him, striking the creature in the jugular and killing it instantly. Suyuki asked if the old man was hurt. He confirmed and thanked him for saving his life. The leader was reminded that 1 tiger man had already been defeated. The mission plaque reappeared, indicating that 4 hours and 11 minutes remained. Only one of the 3 required tiger men had been killed. Suyuki suggested the team rest. Hearing the suggestion, he thought of Heejung while Dabi was already asleep beside him. Tsukuki, irritated by the absence of Nexo, wondered how a group with a regressor in many skills could be so hidden. He reflected on how the situation seemed harder than it should have been. The choice between killing the Tiger King or sacrificing someone weighed on his mind. With a dagger in hand, he concluded that at their current pace, they would never reach the Tiger King. Even confident, Suyuki feared the group wouldn't be safe if the king was stronger. Heejung's sweet voice calmed him, saying she would follow his decision. She assured him she was fine and thanked him for his concern. He smiled shyly and thanked her for the encouragement. With seriousness, Suyuki declared that he would fight with everything he had. Armed with shield and blade, he advanced against 2 tiger men. He struck relentlessly while they attacked fiercely. Soon he realized that 3 tigers were attacking him simultaneously. The guard also charged, shouting Fury of the Universe 4. The entire team, including archers, Dabi, and the old man, joined forces. Dabi encouraged the group by killing a tiger with a precise blow, making it bleed from the mouth. The protagonist congratulated him for his bravery. The day darkened and a strong wind stirred the forest. The remaining tigers appeared, ready to attack. The leader alerted the team about the number of tigers and the need to coordinate their strikes. Everyone began injecting themselves with vitality to protect themselves. He then raised his sword toward the 3 tigers and pointed at them. The tigers roared in rage, ready to attack. Suyuki ran forward bravely and valiantly, ready to slash anything in his way. He then attacked all 3 tigers at once with a single blow, sending them flying. The old man congratulated the boy, saying he wasn't playing around and that he couldn't be left behind. He drew his sword and, along with Heejung, asked the girl to cover his rear, creating a wall of fire. With Suyuki's power and Heejung's flames, they managed to bravely hold off the tigers. Joking with the others, the old man said it was a great way to handle the situation. A noise distracted the old man, and as he turned, he saw a tiger about to attack his daughter. He jumped toward Hurin and cut the tiger in half. Dabi asked Polly about the fury of the universe, and the old man joked that what he did was very impressive. More noises emerged behind the team, and they decided to alert the boy. Before they could explain, the hero stated that it was the sound of the Tiger King. He pushed everyone behind him, took a step forward, and faced the enormous, muscular tiger foaming at the mouth, ready to attack. The Tiger King growled, releasing human words full of hatred. He thought that everything could have been resolved with dialogue. The mission plaque appeared again, informing them that they must kill the Tiger King or offer a sacrifice. The king waited for a response while the protagonist joked about the expectation of a sacrifice. Without a reply, the king grew even more furious. Stuki reflected on what to do since the team hadn't made a plan. Face to face with the king, he realized how great the challenge truly was. Growling non-stop, the tiger became increasingly irritated. Quan noticed that the lightning effects weren't helping with containment. Questioning whether it was the lightning or the animal's extremely thick skin, the protagonist didn't give up on his attacks. Landing a blow to its abdomen, the tiger bent over completely. Noticing that the king was weakening from his attack sequences, Quan appeared with his lightning strikes simultaneously. The Tiger Man King, crossing his arms, couldn't withstand Quan's lightning. Not understanding what had happened, the protagonist persisted, trying again. In disbelief at the weakness of that level boss, the boy was stunned. Before the young man could react, the king attempted to land a scratch but was stopped by the protagonist with a counterattack. The follow-up strike sent the strong beast flying. Suyuki mocked the king's weakness, who was stunned by the comment. Then, noticing the animal's comprehension, he questioned whether he had been faking all along. He mocked the animal's pupils, which revealed pure fear. Angered by all the mocking, the beast charged at the protagonist with vengeance and hatred in its eyes. Completely unafraid, the boy mocked it, saying that the whole boss act was a sham. Rushing at the fighter with his chest fully exposed, the tiger was struck and launched away with a blow to the torso. In a threatening stance and with the tiger already on the ground, apparently exhausted, Quan asked if he wanted to continue. Heejung launched a wall of fire to protect her entire team and praised her leader to the soldier for being able to restrain the boss. Everyone gave their all, unleashing the fury of the universe around them. Dabi asked if they could call for help. Cole joked with Dabi, calling him to rest beside him. He raised his sword upward, called for vitality, and showed his strength. The archer praised the goblin's bravery. They all managed to take care of the tiger men surrounding them and seeking a fight. Haring was pleased to have managed to throw the tiger away with her staff. Heejung observed the girl and thought about her past life, remembering her days as a warrior priestess. Then she opened a portal, asking Quan to finish quickly so they could regroup with the rest of the team. The protagonist thought about how such leadership and control were expected of him by his partner. Pointing his shield at the Tiger King, the boy wanted to finish the situation quickly. Using his claws to attack, Suyuki laughed, saying that wouldn't work on him. When he least expected, the king entered the portal. Screaming desperately, he signaled to his team that the beast was heading their way. Appearing behind Harem before she could see it, the soldier shouted to his companion. Running as fast as possible, the soldier managed to push the girl aside, taking a bite from the animal on his neck. Cole screamed for his friend while threatening to shoot an arrow in hopes the animal would let go. Quan flew at the beast with all of his rage. The old man scratched the Tiger King's face. Harem screamed for her father and healed his wounds with her staff. After managing to kill the Tiger King, the girl ran to her father, asking if everything was okay. He confirmed, saying that even the system itself had declared that everything was over. The panel notified the players that the team had earned 2,000 points, but because player Seo ingested too much blood, he would inherit the throne. Thrown to the ground with a massive headache, the soldier began to feel strange. When he lifted his head, he was no longer the same. He had transformed. Growling aggressively at everyone present, Harem became frightened. Seo begged his daughter not to come near because he couldn't control himself. Desperate, he pleaded for Suyuki to take her and him to a safe place immediately. Irritated with the situation, he looked directly at Heejun, asking if there was any way to reverse it. With a sad expression, the girl remained silent, signaling no. Quan blamed himself for his carelessness, having caused such a huge problem for his friend. The boy remembered how he had to kill the other bosses, and that this meant he would have to kill the old man if he became a boss. The panel notifies a neutralizing potion, announcing that it was 20% sponsored, and asks if they were interested. Quickly grabbing the provided medication, Quan seizes the beast and injects the entire remedy down its throat. Feeling the urge to vomit, Seo returns to his human form once again. Upon regaining his form, he faints to the side. Heron, worried, starts calling out for her father. Seo blinks his eyes, questioning what had happened. Heron asks if her father is feeling okay. Jokingly, he explains that he lost consciousness after turning into a tiger man. Heron says that Suyuki had saved him with a potion that suddenly appeared. With a proud air, Quan observes. Quan comments that Seo had changed his appearance. Cole says that without a doubt, he saw an orange tint to his skin and an animalistic look in his eyes. Dabi adds, mentioning the increased height. Happy, Seo says he felt the strength of a tiger. The old man calls for the protagonist, who doesn't understand why. Before he can dodge, he jumps on the boy, thanking him for saving him. Quan, happy, says he told them he would save them. Seo tells Quan that, as a safety measure, if something happens to him or his daughter, he wants him to save his daughter first. The protagonist agrees but jokes that if it were him, he would save everyone. Continuing with the gratitude, Cole asks how he managed to do that. Quan explains that his constellation sponsored a neutralizing potion. Moved, Heron is grateful for the constellation's real sponsorship. Quan informs them it was released as a pre-sponsorship, so there's a chance it could become a full one as they level up. The blonde boy then mentions he hadn't heard of anyone with sponsors up to that point. He reflects that at that moment, the fact Quan managed to get an item no one else had meant something. Quan says it meant the ownership rate of the sponsor and constellation had increased significantly. Everyone is happy but also confused about everything that had happened so far. Cole says he wasn't talking about that, but about the penalty the contract might suffer. Tsuyuki doesn't understand and asks for an explanation. The boy explains that even in the community, ownership percentage wasn't always good, so it could go either way. He continues saying that if no one else had received anything and everything pointed to something negative, how certain were they that nothing bad would happen? Doing nothing when the ownership rate increases probably meant the penalty would be greater. Kwon in his thoughts tried to connect the dots, wondering if his penalty would be something bad. Cole continues, saying that regardless of the result, everyone should be grateful to the leader's consolation. Everyone ends up thanking the boy. Heejung interrupts the conversation and asks them to keep moving since everything had been resolved. Cole suggests resting a bit since they had just defeated the level boss. Heejung says that due to her ability, it activated when the king was killed, which could mean a hidden mission. Excited, Seo agrees, saying they didn't mean to worry about him. Cheerful, he says he had managed to improve his skills and had also acquired tiger blood. Kwon jokes that he hopes Seo's body doesn't keep growing like a tiger's. Seo retorts, saying he only saw advantages. Tsuyuki asks Heejung where everyone should go. The girl says toward a cave, but she doesn't know exactly where it is. Seo says that with his new skills, he has a great sense of smell, and that the cave lies in that direction. Excited, she says to follow the old man then. Karim shows Dabi the different creatures, including a beautiful little bunny. Heejun notices Heron's joy now that her father is better. Upon reaching the cave, Cole says it looks like a tiger den. Kwon tells everyone to enter together so they can observe and explore the place. First attempt in the forest zone. With sword in hand, Seo enters the cave first. Seo begins to hear the voices and commands of the tigers. Overcome with fear, Heron quickly grabs her father's hand and he tries to calm her, saying everything will be fine. The Tiger King appears. One of the warrior women present suggests offering Seo's daughter as a sacrifice to the king. A second soldier comments that she had lost her mind. Before he could finish his sentence, Seo cuts off his arm with his sword. Angry at the soldiers, Seo says they should offer the one-armed boy as the first sacrifice. The soldiers begin to surround him, claiming they're on the same side while questioning whether Seo thought he could defeat them. Seo begins a massacre, killing them one by one. The leader asks him not to come any closer and calls him a murderer. Seo interrupts her, stating that they were also murderers for offering his family as a sacrifice. He then throws all the humans aside and asks the tiger if those were enough. He asks his daughter to cast the shield spell. Heron, frightened, begs him not to force her. The man insists that she just cast the spell and close her eyes, adding that he feels a deep love for her. Behind him, the king questions why the man had subordinates like daughters and states that they could wait. Seo tries to calm Heron, who is crying desperately. He looks at his daughter and apologizes for not being able to protect her until the end, asking her to go to the next floor. After the sacrifice was offered, the tiger men would no longer attack. The gathered group was ready to enter and explore the cave. Kwon asks if there was a problem with the percentage being at 21%. Heejung questions the pre-sponsorship that was at 20%. Kwon confirms, explaining that 1% was allocated to the neutralizing potion. The girl comments that 20% shouldn't be a big deal for him, but that they would come later and take care of it. Kwon asks if the place they were going to at that moment was also a hidden quest. Heejung confirms, saying the hidden room was similar to the one he found on the second floor. Kwon asks if she managed to kill the king on her first attempt. With a sad expression, she reveals that half of her group members died and that she liked one of them. Kwon asks if that happened on the 6th floor. She denies it, explaining that on that floor they were too busy casting spells and fighting the queen. Tsuyuki comments that he feels bad but would like to know what would happen if he offered a sacrifice to the Tiger King. He then explains that only one member could move on to the next floor. They then realize that the 7th floor was a trap, as facing the king wasn't hard even with tigers around. Suk states that the solution isn't to run away from conflict. Looking at the boy, the girl says his choice wasn't wrong because it was natural. Kwon admits that even if he went back, he would have made the same choice. Heejung makes an unusual comment to the protagonist, saying he didn't use a shield in the past, which explained the odd feeling. Throughout the entire battle, he blocked blows with the shield and counterattacks, so for him it was instinctive. The girl suggests that Kwon fight without the shield, but makes it clear she doesn't want to pressure him. The boy considers the idea, but asks which weapon he should use. She reveals that the weapon he used the most was the axe that accompanied him up to the 24th floor. Kwon hesitates about her suggestion. She jokes that she always felt something was missing. Embarrassed, he thanks her. Seo calls everyone to the center of the area. He comments that the sword stuck in the stone suited Tsuyuki. The sword there belonged to the Tiger King, who planned to use it when he became human. Kwon suggests the old man keep the sword. Excited, the old man runs, grabs the object, and starts hugging it. Then he smells something very strong coming from the wall, claiming the scent came from that point. When he pulls the stone, a purple light starts to envelop the area. They open the area and begin a great ritual with the axe. The axe was powerful and imposing. Next to it was a cushion with the gallbladder of King Lucio, which together with his fire power illuminated the whole space. Kwon suggests that everyone go out hunting while they still had time. Dabi approves the idea and asks to be included. In the end, the remaining time shows 0 to 0. Congratulations. Everyone advanced to the 7th floor. The forest zone was successfully completed. Calculating the achievements, the group reached 44,798 points and entered the waiting room. At that moment, the protagonist wondered if that score was enough. The location offered the options to confirm or cancel the registration. Then the boy registers the points in the guidebook. An unbreakable tower so resistant that not even a regressor could destroy it. That was the challenge before the determined climber who advanced tirelessly through the floors of the mysterious structure. At the moment the guide for Floor 7 was recorded, excitement took over the room. The preparation was complete, everything was ready for the next stage of the journey. The debate about the tower intensified with questions about the constellation's help and jokes about a possible movie adaptation. Suyuk suggested a guide to maintain a good image, but Dabi's responses were explosive and full of doubt. Suddenly, Suyuk was unexpectedly called, causing surprise and confusion when he heard his name from Dabi. Right after, he noticed Suyuk's clothes seemed tighter and asked if he had gained weight. Outraged, he insisted he was exactly the same. Suyuk then asked why he was called, to which Dabi replied simply and directly he was sick of bread and was hungry. The boy realized that to eat something different, he would need to accumulate more achievement points. For a moment he hesitated, but soon decided not to worry about it. Determined, he simply decided to kill a few more monsters. With enthusiasm, he asked Dabi what he wanted to eat, and the answer came without hesitation: meat. It was a loin steak from the land, known for its smooth and unparalleled flavor. The meal promised to be much better than the usual bread. That steak reminded Suyuk of home, but he scolded himself for getting sentimental and decided to reinforce his determination. Meanwhile, the time to proceed to the next floor had already run out. The Tower of Trials announced that all climbers should participate in Floor 8 and recommended they prepare. However, with no time remaining, the only option was to rest before the next challenge. Suyuk realized he had a good amount of time before starting Floor 8. He then decided to take the opportunity to make some preparations before the next challenge. He asked Hee-jung if there was anything important he should know before facing Floor 8, especially regarding what he should be careful about. She replied that he would be fine on his own and didn't need any advice from her. Suyuk was surprised and asked if they weren't going together, but Hee-jung explained that everyone would participate, yet the trial would be individual. She said there was nothing more she could advise him. Intrigued by the idea of an individual trial, he questioned whether it would be something like a survival battle royale. However, the response was that they didn't need to fight, but instead lose a bit of the possession percentage they had. Curious, Suyuk wanted to know more about the percentage of skills restricted from floor to floor. Hee-jung explained that the skill restriction on Floor 8 would be around 5%, but depending on performance, it could be partially recovered. Suyuk, optimistic, thought that by Floor 10 he'd be back to normal. However, she warned that Floors 8 and 10 would be more challenging, and that he would only recover all of his skills on Floor 11. She emphasized that this would actually be an advantage for him, since the higher the skill level, the smaller the growth. With the restrictions lifted, Suyuk would become much stronger than he currently was. Suyuk decided to take advantage of the situation and restrict 20% of his skills to consume 20% of his possession percentage. The confirmation came quickly, and with that, the limited skills would be slowly recovered as he climbed the floors. He expressed that the situation was harder than he imagined. Then he thought out the axe he was using, and although he hadn't formed his solid opinion yet, he felt he needed to use it more to better assess its effectiveness. Hee-jung commented that he would probably use the axe a lot on Floor 9 and reminded him that he still hadn't eaten the bear's gallbladder, which could be important for the next challenge. Suyuk was planning to eat it after finishing the conversation, but he questioned whether eating the bear's gallbladder would turn him into a bear, just like the old man almost turned into a tiger. Hee-jung reassured him, explaining that the old man ended up that way because he ate fresh meat, while Suyuk would eat something refined. Suyuk was relieved, realizing he had worried for no reason. The boy was instructed to eat it soon and to report the effects afterward. He agreed, saying he'd call later to share how he felt. The gallbladder, which had been vomited by the bear king when he became human, contained the power of that being. Suyuk tried to stay firm, remembering that the worst medicines were usually the ones best for the body. He repeated to himself that despite the suffering, everything would be fine. After consuming the Bear King's gallbladder, all at once he felt the power invade his body. His system began to react and a notification appeared. You have consumed the Bear King's gallbladder. Your body is receiving the power of the Bear King. He acquired level 4 blood, which significantly increased his absorption rate. Strength, agility, and stamina were drastically enhanced. Eventually, his blood evolved into level 7 bear blood, reflecting an even greater improvement in his physical abilities. He checked his stats after consuming the Bear King's gallbladder. He held the title Truth Hunter at the Crossroads and had no affiliation. His sponsor and constellation was the Iron Thunder, Master of Wherever It Goes. His possession percentage was at 109%. The stats showed declines due to restrictions, but he had recovered around 5% of his skills. His skills included Lightning Essence LV5, Intuition LV5, Indomitable LV14 +5, and Bear Blood LV7. Dabi, after getting out of the bath, asked Suyuk if he had already finished his. When Soo-hyuk asked about anything else, Dabi quickly complained about the smell of something in the air, asking if Soo-hyuk had done that. Dabi, with his peculiar personality, suggested that Soo-hyuk take a bath once in a while, joking with him. Soo-hyuk was impressed that the bear blood skill had reached level 7 so quickly and became curious about the kind of skill that could cause this. He asked himself if it would be similar to tiger blood and thought about asking the old man about it later. He was trying to better understand the power of these abilities that seemed so impressive. His friend replied that he still didn't know exactly what the tiger blood skill did, but it seemed to have given him a strength boost. Soo-hyuk thanked him and wished him a good day, but he was left with a lingering doubt. Although his body was stronger, he still felt suspicious about the effects. His main concern was whether he really wouldn't transform into a bear. Curious about the effects of the Bear King's power, he thought about testing the axe. He examined the Bear King's double-bladed axe, the one the king wanted to use upon becoming human, and learned it was imbued with the Bear King's deep resentment. When he picked up the axe, Soo-hyuk noticed it felt much lighter. Additionally, he felt as if something had ignited within him, a power he didn't fully understand but that seemed to have been recently activated. He wondered if what he felt from the axe was just an impression, but quickly realized it seemed to be something truly good, compared to the mace he used before. Dabi then made a funny comment, saying Soo-hyuk's mind was chaotic and smelly. Soo-hyuk apologized, explaining he just needed to test something before continuing with his plans. Soo-hyuk concluded that the 20% skill restriction wouldn't be a problem for him. With renewed confidence, he prepared for the next floor, convinced he could overcome any challenge that appeared. The time for the next floor came to an end, and Soo-hyuk was informed that he would be taken to the Tower of Trials, Floor B. The notification indicated that the resentment of the Bear King imbued in the Bear King's double-bladed axe was reacting with the bear blood. As a result, the power emanating from the blood was increasing drastically. Additionally, a hidden quest related to the Bear King's resentment would now begin, which would likely bring new challenges and powers for Soo-hyuk to face. Soo-hyuk was taken to the Tower of Trials, Floor 8, where he entered the room of loot or keep. On Floor 8, the climbers had the option to choose between looting or keeping, likely depending on how they wanted to handle the floor's challenges and rewards. The time count showed that he was on the second day of his journey. On Floor 8, the dynamic between climbers was crucial. If both chose to loot, a fight between them would begin. The defeated climber would die, and the winner would lose 2 of their strongest skills. If Climber A chose to loot and Climber B chose to keep, and Climber A could steal one of Climber B's skills. The rules created a strategic tension where each choice could have dramatic consequences. If both climbers chose to keep, then they would advance to Floor 9. This indicated that by choosing not to fight and preserving their skills, climbers could continue the journey without direct confrontations. But with the challenge of facing the next floor, the tension between looting and keeping would be an important decision for each person's progress. Kwon Soo-hyuk, the first-ranked climber, and Alexei Braham, the third, entered Floor 8. The remaining time until the next phase started was 1 hour. Both were about to face the challenge, and the choices they made could directly impact the course of their journey in the Tower of Trials. It seems Dabi wasn't mentioned as a participant of Floor 8. He might be waiting elsewhere or wasn't assigned to this specific floor. Perhaps he's involved in other tasks or challenges while Soo-hyuk and Alexei faced this phase. Soo-hyuk felt a sinister vibe coming from Brahm, and to his surprise, it seemed she was using a double-bladed axe just like he was. The coincidence didn't go unnoticed, and this could be an indication that she was a formidable opponent or connected to some important challenge that Soo-hyuk would need to face. Soo-hyuk, being in a position of strength, thought it was natural to be seen as someone who would choose to loot. This choice could be an opportunity for him, but it also meant he would be exposed to possible confrontations where he'd need to use his skills to win. The decision to loot or keep would be strategic, and he knew he could face difficult challenges depending on his choice. He then wondered who would go so far as to risk their life, reflecting on the difficult choices in the game. Soon after, he had an interaction with Alexei, and the person asked if he was Korean and then immediately introduced themselves. This indicated that Soo-hyuk was now meeting other climbers or people within the Tower of Trials, which could open new opportunities or conflicts. When asked about his origin, he correctly guessed that the person he was speaking with was Russian. She then responded that she really wanted to meet him and went on to reveal that he was the man ranked first. This meant that his fame and position were attracting the attention of other climbers, which could lead to both allies and enemies in the Tower of Trials. After the greetings, Soo-hyuk began to think about how he could persuade the Russian. He knew that depending on the situation, it could be advantageous to form alliances or manipulate the conversation to gain something valuable for his progress. Now he needed to decide which approach to use to gain trust or perhaps even an advantage over her. So he thought it might be a good idea to start by explaining the difference in strength between them. This approach could help establish his superiority or help her understand his position in the rankings. He knew that by showing his strength, he could earn more respect or even gain an edge in a negotiation or confrontation. The strategy was beginning to take shape in his mind. Soo-hyuk and the Russian then both decided to choose loot. This choice indicated that a confrontation was about to happen, where both were willing to risk their skills and lives to gain something. The atmosphere was becoming increasingly tense with the expectation that the duel between them was inevitable. The Russian, before making her final decision, began to speak, apparently wanting to explain something about her abilities. This indicated that she was trying to gain some sort of advantage or perhaps warn Soo-hyuk about her capabilities. However, she interrupted her speech with a statement that she would choose loot, making the confrontation even more imminent. Realizing the complication of the situation, he tried to use his intuition to make the best decision after showing the difference in strength, but he found himself frustrated when he realized he couldn't even begin to control the situation as he had planned. The pressure was increasing and he would need to find a way to adapt quickly to deal with what was coming. Soo-hyuk realized that if he and the Russian didn't choose to keep, the only remaining option would be to loot. This meant he needed to prepare for the confrontation. The tension was rising and he knew he needed to act with wisdom and strength to come out victorious. The protagonist then began to reflect on which skill would be the worst to lose in the event of a confrontation. He listed his skills: Lightning Essence LV5, Battle Concentration LV15 +5, Indomitable LV14 +5, and Imitation LV1. He needed to assess which of them was the most valuable to him at the moment, considering what he would need to overcome the challenge ahead. Soo-hyuk reflected on his highest level skills, Indomitable and Battle Concentration. He asked himself whether the levels increased by items would also be taken into account. If so, then both Battle Concentration and Indomitable would be the most valuable to him. If not, he concluded that Battle Concentration would be the most important skill to preserve. He needed a careful strategy to ensure that crucial skills wouldn't be compromised in the fight, worried about the possibility of losing Lightning Essence if he chose to keep while his opponent chose to loot. He knew that if this happened, losing that skill would be a major blow since it was one of his most powerful abilities. He pondered the consequences of that choice, considering whether he would be able to compensate for the loss or if he would need to change his strategy to ensure victory. The protagonist asked himself about his opponent's intentions. Even knowing that he was much stronger, she was still willing to fight. He knew he needed to avoid losing Lightning Essence at all costs, but he couldn't understand why she wanted to risk fighting him. Perhaps she had some plan or special skill he didn't know about yet, which made the situation even more uncertain. Soo-hyuk thought that maybe his opponent was just trying to test his reaction. By saying she would choose loot, she probably wanted to see how he would react and then perhaps choose to keep. This seemed to be an attempt to confuse or manipulate his decision. Soo-hyuk became more alert, realizing that the situation was more strategic than he had imagined. He would have to be careful with every step from then on. He realized that his opponent knew that facing him would be certain death, yet there was still something different about her. She seemed to have an energy or motivation that made her willing to risk everything. He asked if she had some greater objective or a personal reason for wanting to fight. Maybe she was testing something beyond simple victory, or perhaps there was a bigger plan in mind that he still didn't understand. This made the situation even more complex and dangerous. It was a simple but powerful motivation. She was not willing to allow her resources or abilities to be taken, no matter the cost. This made sense as many climbers face this kind of conflict where the loss of something precious could mean the end of the journey. Soo-hyuk realized that despite the difference in strength, she was willing to risk everything for something she believed was her right. This made the situation more dangerous and unpredictable than he had imagined. Soo-hyuk was reflecting on his choice on floor 8, where he could choose between looting or keeping. He was beginning to feel uncomfortable with the idea of choosing loot as it could result in the loss of important skills. Despite having gained power with bare blood, he knew this strategic decision could deeply impact him. Interactions with other climbers, like the determined woman, were also making this situation more complicated. On floor 8, climbers arrive at the room of loot or keep. They need to choose between looting or keeping. The room is named that way because of the nature of the challenge, where looting means stealing skills or items from other participants. The decision to keep offers more safety, while choosing to loot involves risks like losing skills and facing other competitors. Tension rises as the climbers weigh their choices and the consequences of their actions. Alexei appeared to be on high alert, with a serious expression that showed focus and slight tension. He was clearly reflecting on the choices he needed to make. The fact that he was on floor 8, where decisions could lead to major consequences, made him more cautious. His behavior indicated that he knew exactly what was at stake, and any wrong move could be costly. That expression of doubt and focus showed the weight of the situation he was in, as if he had finally made an important discovery. The idea of a thief in that room gave the whole scenario a new context. He now seemed to know exactly what was happening, and his posture showed he was about to act on that new understanding. The tension in the room increased as everyone there knew that any move now could lead to an unexpected reaction. He realized that something strange was happening in the room. Although it seemed normal, he felt an absence of presence, indicating that a thief might be hiding there, observing and waiting for the right moment to act. The tension grew as he prepared for what was to come. He began to question whether the entire room was just an illusion, which would explain the absence of any presence or energy he would normally feel. He decided that the best way to confirm this was to test the situation in some way. He then decided to use the Lightning Essence skill to test the situation and check if there was truly an illusion or an anomaly in the room. hoping that his ability would reveal some hidden truth. Alexei, upon realizing that the other two had chosen keep instead of loot, expressed his surprise, unable to understand the reason for that decision. He expected a more aggressive and strategic action, since both were in an advantageous situation. Kwon Soo-hyuk managed to detect the presence of the skill Thief Gremlin, thus completing the hidden quest. As a result, the trial of Floor 8 disappeared as he was able to identify the trick behind the room and eliminate the threat. Braham was frustrated for not having noticed the trap earlier. Even though she managed to pass the trial, she regretted not having thought of the solution more quickly. Kwon Soo-hyuk successfully advanced to the next level after completing Floor 8, acquiring new skills such as Lightning Essence and Imitation. He also unlocked a significant level of intuition. However, it seems there was an error in the transcription of the last part. He managed to overcome the floor and his restricted skills were recovered. Kwon Soo-hyuk continues to dominate the Tower of Trials rankings, maintaining the first-place position. The leaderboard was updated with the confirmation of his victory and the consistency of his performance, solidifying his leadership in the competition. Besides Kwon Soo-hyuk, other climbers like Ha Hee-jung, Seo Hosu, and Seo Haerin maintained their positions in the ranking, ensuring the Republic of Korea's stability in the lead within Zone C 66,432. With these results, Earth continues to dominate the rankings among the planets in the zone, standing out among other competitors. Scientists both on Earth and on other planets have been intensely dedicated to studying the Tower of Trials and its connection to other intelligent life forms in the universe. The importance of this study is crucial to understanding the nature of the trials climbers face, and the implications of their outcomes not only for the individuals involved, but also for the civilizations of various planets. Advancing knowledge about the tower's structures and the abilities acquired may represent a key to unlocking unimaginable powers. Despite all efforts to unravel the mysteries of the Tower of Trials, its true nature still remains hidden. With the advent of a mysterious voice that echoed across the planet mentioning the Green Belt, there is growing fascination and speculation about the involvement of alien civilizations. The claim that these civilizations are gaining strength and influence increases the complexity of what was once a phenomenon restricted to tower climbers. This new information is generating a wave of interplanetary investigations and theories about how extraterrestrial civilizations might be in some way connected to the tower and its trials. Pseudo-religious cults have begun to gain attention, claiming that the Tower of Trials is a punishment from God. They believe that the challenges faced by the climbers are not just physical trials but also spiritual, as a form of divine judgment or preparation for a great cosmic event. Meanwhile, in the waiting room of the Tower of Trials, Kwon Soo-hyuk is a climber of the Tower of Trials with no affiliation and holds the title of Truth Hunter at the Crossroads. He possesses skills such as Lightning Essence, Intuition, and Imitation. His attributes include high stamina 817, agility 752, and strength 778, with magic at 465. He has 109% possession and is sponsored by the constellation Iron Thunder, master of wherever it goes. Kwon Soo-hyuk reflects on his luck in acquiring the imitation skill randomly, recognizing that it could have been much worse if he had lost an important skill on Floor 8. He seems relieved for not having faced a situation that would have been more harmful to him. That same Kwon feels a mix of relief and disgust when thinking that if he had lost a random skill on Floor 8, the most likely one would have been Lightning Essence, which he considers vital for his progress and power. He feels uncomfortable just imagining the possibility. Their friend, who everyone calls the Old Man, feels even more powerful after gaining the Steel Shield art skill, which excites him about his new strength. Meanwhile, another one of them realizes he lost his skill, but fortunately, it doesn't seem to be important. This brings temporary relief, though he still feels that losing skills could be a constant risk. The bald one reflects on the situation on Floor 8 of the Tower of Trials. He feels surprised and even a little suspicious about his opponent's behavior, who, despite insisting she would choose loot the entire time, actually chose to keep in the end. This seems to have caused some confusion and questioning as he now wonders about the opponent's true intentions and how they played the situation. They then ask Kwon Soo-hyuk how it went on his floor, and he explains that in addition to his opponent behaving unexpectedly, the true culprit was a skill thief gremlin, who was using illusion magic to deceive the climbers. When Soo-hyuk detected the gremlin's presence and uncovered the illusion, he was able to gain new skills and points, which explains the confusion generated in the community, as many didn't realize what was happening behind the appearance of a simple loot or keep dilemma. The community reacts with surprise and frustration to what happened on Floor 8, especially regarding the climbers' choices. Comments indicate that many were shocked to discover there was an illusion behind the loot or keep dilemma, with some even expressing anger over certain players' decisions. Some participants discuss the implications of choosing to kill someone, while others celebrate having obtained powerful skills during the trial. Amid this, there are also people accusing others of lying about their choices, highlighting the growing tension in the community after the revelation that it was all part of an illusion. Soo-hyuk was a bit tired of reading all of that and decided to take a break while reflecting on the complicated situation. Kwon Soo-hyuk was beginning to wonder why Hee-jung's messages still hadn't arrived. He was a bit puzzled, as he expected them to show up at any moment. He began to question whether Heejung really wanted him to kill someone. The idea crossed his mind, but he quickly pushed the thought away, reflecting on whether he could have maintained his mental sanity if he had actually killed someone. He wondered if he would have been able to endure all of this without losing his mind. If Kwon Soo-hyuk were in Heejung's place, he wondered whether he would have made the best decisions for her future. On floor 9, the intensity of the challenges increases with a new dynamic that demands more skills, more strategy, and much more courage. The rules seem harder to understand, and every choice made can affect what comes next. If he had to face that floor, he knew he would need all of his cunning and strength to overcome it. In a labyrinth, every step can be crucial, and time would be a determining factor. Moving as fast as possible without rushing too much to make mistakes would be essential to avoid traps and find the exit. If the group could stay together and work as a team, they would have a better chance of success. Speed and coordination between them would be the keys to not getting lost and eventually escaping the labyrinth. If the group united and followed the strategy of advancing quickly, there would still be a chance of success. Testing the axe seemed like a good idea. Perhaps it would be necessary to break a barrier or solve a challenge within the labyrinth. The combination of luck and intelligence was what could lead to victory. The axe would be useful, but it was always good to have another option, like the mace, in case the situation demanded a different type of attack. The labyrinth on floor 9 would certainly bring unexpected challenges, and being prepared for any eventuality was the key to ensuring victory, regardless of what might happen. Heejung asked Soo-hyuk to go rest, and he nodded, knowing there wasn't much time to rest, but a moment of recovery would be essential. He took one last look around as if checking to see if everything was in order and said goodbye. On floor 9, new challenges awaited them, and being as prepared as possible would be fundamental for what was coming next. Soo-hyuk arrives at floor 9 of the Tower of Trials called the Kashadim Labyrinth, where he must escape within a 7-hour time limit. He needs to rely on his skills and intuition to find the exit quickly, while time works against him. One of the group members asks the others what they are supposed to do on that floor. The bald one then responds by saying not even he knows. Soo-hyuk observes the environment around him and confirms that the place really is a labyrinth, as Heejung mentioned. He thinks of a strategy to escape and suggests that always following one side of the wall might help with memorizing the route. As they were almost being sucked into the labyrinth, Soo-hyuk realizes the need to memorize the entire path. With the situation out of control, he focuses on recording every detail of the route to ensure they can find the exit. Soo-hyuk comes across an imposing figure in front of him. His eyes widen upon seeing the robust silhouette and greenish skin. An orc. He quickly analyzes the situation, ready for any confrontation. The boy feels his body paralyzed by the shock. His instincts scream for him to move, but his muscles don't respond. The orc advances quickly, and the impact between them seems inevitable. His instinct tells him to dodge, but his body doesn't obey. The orc moves with brute force, and before he can react, the impact is inevitable. They continue through the labyrinth when they encounter an orc. As they try to avoid it, they realize they went right past, but something strange happens. Soo-hyuk can't remember the path they took. Confused and irritated, he realizes his memory has been affected. The group begins to feel the effects of the labyrinth, with dizziness and nausea affecting everyone. Heron is the most affected, and Soo-hyuk notices that everyone is exhausted in a short time. Knowing they need to escape before the time limit, he decides the best option is to rest a bit before continuing the exploration. Soo-hyuk is interrupted by his friend, who questions the need to rest. Surprised, he turns to understand the reason for the statement. Soo-hyuk is surprised to hear that Cole has an exceptional memory. He realizes that by trusting Cole as a guide, they can optimize time and avoid excessive exhaustion, as Cole clearly remembers the way to the exit. The team decides to follow this strategy to preserve everyone's stamina and continue advancing through the labyrinth more safely. Cole responds confidently, stating that he still remembers the path to the exit even if they decide to take a different route. He then questions the idea of rushing to the exit, suggesting it might be more advantageous to search for hidden rooms, perhaps to find items or valuable information that could help more in the future. He presents the option of exploring as an interesting alternative before rushing to the exit. Everyone enthusiastically agrees with Soo-hyuk's idea, and the team begins moving more cautiously, looking for any clue that could lead them to a secret room. They know that by exploring deeper, they may find something that helps them complete the challenge or even gain an unexpected advantage. The atmosphere is full of anticipation as they search for more secrets within the labyrinth. The atmosphere inside the labyrinth seems to lighten with Dobby's words and laughter, who keeps joking despite the tension in the environment. He seems to be having fun, and his enthusiasm is contagious to the other group members who, despite their fatigue, begin to feel more motivated. Soo-hyuk, on the other hand, seems a little embarrassed by the joke, but he also recognizes that finding this secret path could be an important breakthrough. The team continues searching for answers while keeping their pace as they explore the labyrinth. The tension grows as they approach a possible new discovery within the labyrinth. The team moves forward with greater focus, ready for what's to come but aware that each step could be crucial to the mission's success. Soo-hyuk decides to try something on his own, something that seems related to testing his skills or the new axe he acquired. He feels it's important to do this alone, perhaps to test his own limits or to ensure he's prepared for any challenges ahead. The surprise team questions his decision, but he remains firm, believing that this individual experience will be essential to the mission's progress. Determined to face the monster alone, the group members express concern for his safety. They offer help if needed, asking him to shout if he feels he's in danger. Sujuk, confident, assures them he's fine but accepts their support if necessary. He waves, demonstrating his confidence, and prepares for the confrontation. The protagonist wonders if something is missing, perhaps because he's not using a shield or is testing the axe instead of using other options. He feels he needs more strength or preparation to properly face the monster. Even so, he stays focused. Without a second thought, he charges at the bull, knocking it out and finishing it off. Noticing what Suhyuk just did, they ask how he managed to do it alone. They tell him those moves were the best he's ever made. This makes him embarrassed and he thanks the others. It seems the character is starting to better understand the combat mechanics with the axe, something that could be crucial for the next battle. Using both hands would definitely offer more control and strength, and this is a good step toward improving his combat skills. Switching to a two-handed axe seemed like a great idea for Sujuk, especially to increase attack power and control during combat. The choice to change weapons could make a big difference, and he was adapting well to the situation. Sujuk reflected on the situation and decided that for now, he would use the axe as it was. Although he felt he couldn't do much with the mace at the moment, he knew he shouldn't waste a good opportunity. Instead of acting impulsively, he chose to wait and adapt as the situation unfolded. Suhyuk agrees to let Heron use the mace since she seems more comfortable with it for protection. He's fine with the two-handed axe and trusts her choice, prioritizing the group's safety. Suhyuk hands the mace to Heron, who thanks him for the valuable weapon. Despite asking if she's comfortable with a melee weapon, Heron confidently replies that she'll do well, especially since it was Suhyuk who gave it to her. The group observes, noting that their relationship seems to be strengthening. The group continues to face challenges in the labyrinth of Kashuran with time running out. Suhyuk decides to leave a goblin for Heron to test her combat skills. Heron, though a bit hesitant, accepts the challenge with determination, trusting her strength and the weapon given by Suhyuk. The team is ready to act quickly to complete the labyrinth and escape within the time limit. Heron continues testing her skills with the mace, surprised by how well it fits in her hand. Suhyuk watches with interest, asking if she wants to try again, which Heron agrees enthusiastically. Meanwhile, the group faces more goblins and Heron receives support from Suhyuk, who protects her from the rear during battle. After the fight, Suhyuk notices something strange where the goblins were earlier. He questions what it could be, leaving open the possibility of a new surprise or threat. At the moment, the group finds a strange box in the labyrinth that looks like a treasure chest, but Suhyuk and the others quickly suspect it might be a mimic, a creature that disguises itself as a chest to trick adventurers. Suhyuk decides to approach and investigate, and with rising tension, he prepares to face it.